So last year I decided to do a massive retrospective attempting to understand a franchise that had always terrified me as a kid. And today I'm gonna do the same. Next to Saw, the Child's Play series and Chucky specifically horrified me despite having never seen any of the films. The memory is a little fuzzy, but I recall our family always getting those TV guides or a magazine of some sorts. And in the back they would list a bunch of numbers you could call for something, I don't know, I was too young to comprehend it. There were also a bunch of tiny little images scattered across the back of these magazines, and I distinctly remember that being my first exposure to Chucky. I saw this evil doll smiling at me with a menacing look in his eye, and asked my dad what the hell it was, to which he promptly told his adolescent kid that it was merely a toy that had come to life with the intent of murdering people. Didn't include the detail that it was fake. Around this time, I already had a crippling fear of the Teals doll from Sonic R, as well as those creepy Alvin and the Chipmunk puppets from Disaster Movie. Stories I've talked about many times before. But now it was like, oh great, a third killer toy to worry about. Why hasn't anybody done anything about this? Why are you letting this happen, Obama?
You son of a bitch!
I vehemently avoided this franchise for around a decade until I came into my living room one day as my dad was watching one of them, Curse of Chucky, I believe. And I thought it was pretty spooky. See, despite me and my sister's brief horror movie phase where we would rent out scary movies at the local Extravision to watch on the weekend, Chucky was never one of them. Franchise horror films in general tended to be something we avoided before they eventually turned into franchises. We would get the likes of Insidious, Sinister, what's the other one? There's always like 3 movies that blend together in my mind. The Conjuring, that was the one. The most uncreative names for horror movies ever. Get ready for my new horror movie. Bodeful, ooh. I think we just had such a confusing experience with Saw 3 that it put us off the idea of ever trying to be invested in a horror series with 5 trillion sequels. The only Child's Play movie I had ever seen in theaters was Child's Play, 2019, and I thought that shit sucked. They made Chucky this stupid, ugly AI that's gone out of control. They unironically try to pass it off in the modern day like it would be some kind of smart device. What do you take me for? An idiot? Didn't give me the best impression of the franchise, but I was also aware this was a reboot for the series. An alternate, more modern take on the original. So I wasn't gonna let that taint my overall views in the previous movies. And so around Halloween of last year, after cycling through all the Saw films, and realizing how much I fucking loved them, it got me thinking about Child's Play and how much I avoided it. And so with that, I finally decided to sit down and watch through them all. And it was confusing, to say the least. Child's Play is a weird series. What starts off as clear horror movies, they slowly start to veer more and more into absurdity until you get the idea that the people behind it were going out of their way to make them comedies over anything. Chucky goes to military school, suddenly gets a girlfriend, then he has this freaky looking kid. This shit goes off the rails. A trend I've began to notice with franchises over the past few decades is that they'll usually start strong, leaving a massive impact on audiences all around the world. And because of that, they'll make a handful of sequels that mostly aim to do the same thing again to varying degrees of success. As the people behind it grow tired of this and want to shake up the formula, they then allow themselves to get more risky with future entries. Even if initially seen as a breath of fresh air, critics and audiences will eventually grow tired of the experimentation, longing for the days of old and hoping these newer pieces of media could take a step back and be more in line with how the series started. The studio will then listen to this feedback and give the franchise a soft reboot. A fresh start that aims to remind people of why they liked said series in the first place by harking back to the originals. Which, while initially seen as a success, begins to alienate hardcore fans who had grown attached to the additions and the evolution made in those later entries, feeling disconnected and ignored now that the franchise is trying to cater back to general audiences who might have been put off by how far astray things had gotten. Eventually, so long has passed that those weirder, perhaps more negatively seen pieces of its history are looked back on more fondly, largely due to the people who grew up with it now being old enough to voice their appreciation for them, and subsequent disappointment that the franchise now almost seems embarrassed by what they were. And then, as a result of that, it gives the studios more confidence in trying to slowly lean back into those more bizarre elements, using nostalgia to appeal to the fanatics who are ecstatic to see the entire franchise once again be embraced, and not just the parts of it that became iconic in pop culture. That may sound like such a specific scenario, but I'm telling you, it's happening everywhere. That's exactly what happened with Saw, Sonic the Hedgehog, Crash Bandicoot, countless. I'm sure you could list some in the comments below. Go for it. And from the outside looking in, Child's Play seems to fit the bill. And so today I wanted to take a look through the entire franchise, the theatrical films, the straight-to-DVD releases, the field reboot, and finally the recently cancelled TV show. There's a lot to cover here, so let's not waste any more time. I want to know, what's the freaking deal with Child's Play? Tell me. But first, before we get on to the first movie, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. Like I've mentioned previously, I live with a cat. It's not my cat, but you know, it rents out a room, so he's chill with me. And might I say, one thing that certainly helped him is Pretty Litter. When a cat's healthy, they're happy. And so it's great to know that Pretty Litter lets me keep tabs on not my cat, this cat's health, with these ultra-absorbent crystals that not only trap odor instantly, which mitigates the smell of bathroom, you know, which I personally find most helpful. Not only do they last up to a month, meaning less time spent scooping and going to the garbage, but the crystal base also minimizes mess and dust. Also, the coolest part is the crystals change color to help monitor early signs of potential illness, including kidney issues. They can be literally life-saving. Pretty Litter ships for free right to your door in a lightweight bag, so not only do you not run out of it, but also doesn't take up much space in your house. So be sure to go to prettylitter.com/LSMark and use code LSMark to save 20% off your first order. And you get a free cat toy. Wow! So once again, be sure to check them out in the comments or description below, and thanks Pretty Litter for sponsoring this video. Again guys, look at this poor cat. He's lost an eye you have to support. So the idea for Child's Play came from one Don Mancini. Let's just check out his Wikipedia page and see what he's about. Personal life. Mancini is gay. I don't know why I think that's so funny out of context is the first thing listed here. Can somebody please edit my Wikipedia page to start with, Mark is straight, full stop. Anyways, he had the idea for the Child's Play series after seeing a couple pieces of media explore the concept of a killer doll and wondering why this idea had never been attempted in a full movie before. Originally named Buddy and designed after the My Buddy dolls, who would have guessed.
My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, wherever I go, he goes.
The plot for Child's Play involved a kid named Andy who had his buddy doll come to life after mixing his blood with its fake blood. I was gonna say how bizarre it was for a doll to be manufactured with fake blood inside, but honestly, toy companies do stuff much weirder.
Uh-oh, I made this stinky.
And then she leaves an uh-oh in her diaper.
A guy by the name of John Lafayette later stepped in to rewrite the script, changing the plot from the doll coming to life to kill Andy's enemies, and instead have the now named Chucky come to life after being possessed by a serial killer, Charles Lee Ray. The entire opening of the film is dedicated to showing us how you wind up in this predicament, as he's attempting to evade the police. His getaway driver gets worried and leaves him there, leading to him hiding in a nearby toy store where he gets shot in the chest and has seemingly reached the end of the line. All seems lost until he grabs one of these good guy dolls, puts his hand on it, and starts doing this strange voodoo ritual in order to transfer his soul into its body. Okay, I've always known about Chucky, but it took me until actually watching the film to know why this killer doll was alive. And let me tell ya, this was the last thing I could have expected. Voodoo magic. Guess he did a bit of it on the side, you know, in between all the strangling. Dude, Chucky is just a great character. There's a reason he's so iconic. He makes the movie. First of all, his design is wonderful. The perfect parody of those old My Buddy dolls while still doing enough to stand on its own. The red hair, the striped sweater, and the animatronic itself is just fantastic, especially considering the film had such a relatively low budget for the time. Same goes for the way these toys were advertised. I love how well they got down that Liam animated 80s toy commercial, it's great. This movie would not work as well if it does if it weren't for how well they got that look done. It's seriously impressive. There's also so many cool looking practical effects. Like, I don't think that opening would be anywhere near as impactful if they didn't actually blow up a store. But you see, none of this would even matter though if it weren't for Chucky's voice performance provided by Brad Dourif. Dude, this man is dedicated. I sang the praises of Tobin Bell throughout my Saw video, and this guy is that but for the Child's Play franchise. He's been voicing Chucky for over 35 years, it's insane. The guy is 74 and still doing it. I mean, let's be real, everybody knows Chucky's voice.
That's no way to treat your best friend.
What the fuck?
You stupid bitch!
There we go.
Did you fuck with me?
God. The funniest thing about all that is that for the first half of the movie, we barely see him do anything. And really, I think that's one of its strongest aspects, the build-up. Of course, we all know the doll is going to come to life, but there is so much emphasis put on the mystery. The police and detectives thinking that the kid is the one committing all these murders as Chucky just sits there. Dude, some of the scariest shots in this film are the ones where we just barely see him moving. That split second of him racing across the room is so good, I can only imagine how terrifying that must have been when watching this for the first time. You know, before the impact of Chucky was lessened through advertisers slapping his face on everything. It's kind of hard to be scared of this character after walking into a Hot Topic and seeing this. although I think the idea of willingly walking into a Hot Topic is scarier than that. Ironically, the other scariest shots in this are in fact the ones where we see Chucky moving the most. And it's because some of the stuff they have him do here would just not be possible to do with an animatronic, not convincingly at least. And so instead, they opted to have a little person dress up as Chucky. And it is genuinely horrifying. Look at this. I think it's because it reaches that uncanny valley vibe. You've gone through the entire film with this thing barely moving, but now he's walking around jumping on beds like a human. It's super creepy. Well, that's not to say Chucky himself is the only good aspect, though, because really, everybody does a great job. I was surprised to see just how well Andy worked, despite kid characters usually being a mark of death for most horror movies. And I think it comes down to two simple factors. 1. The kid can cry. There is nothing more obnoxious than watching a horror movie featuring a kid where they just have a constant smirk on their face the entire time. Like they couldn't be happier to have landed a gig. It can seriously ruin a movie for me. I think I would have enjoyed the Five Nights at Freddy's movie a whole lot more if the main kid didn't constantly act like the biggest fear in her mind was her mom finding out she stole an extra cookie from the cupboard. Comparatively, Andy, despite stumbling over his lines a bit, the poor kid, does a fantastic job at selling how scary of a situation this would be for a, I don't know, 2-year-old. Although, I don't know, the characters keep making these bizarre-ass comments about him. It got a little weird at times.
I'll take care of Andy for you.
Becky, you can't do it again.
Don't be silly. It'll be the hottest date I've had in months.
But I gotta go. I have a date with a 6-year-old boy.
Clip it, put it on Twitter, you're done for, Chucky. And 2, the kid is put in real danger. Obviously, no mainstream movie is going to even attempt to get away with killing a kid. Even in a horror film, I think producers feel like it might put the audience in a bad mood if they're going around killing kids left and right. Nobody likes seeing something defenseless get tortured unless you're a sicko or something. But because of that, it is your job as the filmmaker to try and convince the audience as best you can that maybe something will happen to the kid. So they're sitting there in the theater like, wait, there's no way they're actually gonna kill a kid, right? Of course, there's a 99% chance that's not gonna happen, but as long as they've made you fear for them, then I'd say they've done their job. And Child's Play really succeeds at that. Not only because of how innocent and vulnerable Andy is,
Chucky!
but also because eventually Chucky's entire motivation is getting to him. Basically, Andy wants a good guy doll for his birthday as they're the hot new thing on the market, leading to his mom having to buy one from this shitty homeless guy. Wonder where he got it from. From there, you get the idea pretty quickly. Chucky wants revenge on 2 people. His getaway driver for abandoning him, and the detective who shot at him. I love this little bit of motivation. It would have been super easy for them to make the movie, well, now Chucky is evil and wants to murder everyone in the house. Because spooky. But everything he does here is motivated by this goal. He isn't just wandering around the house because it's a creepy movie. He wants to find out more information on these guys wherever he can. He really only ever targets people who get in the way of his goal. Case in point, Aunt Maggie. Like Saw, let's make a little kill count throughout the retrospective. I'm actually keeping track of the numbers in my notes this time, so there's no way I'll screw it up. Aunt Maggie is our first kill of the movie as she keeps trying to put Andy and Chucky in bed while he wants to watch the news to learn more about his getaway driver who's just escaped prison. And so after a super suspenseful build-up, we get this sweet POV shot of him pushing her out of the window. Oh yeah, they live in an apartment building. Next up is said getaway driver as Chucky convinces Andy to take him to the guy's house. They never even interact, weirdly enough. He just turns the stove on and lights the place aflame. Again, this is a sweet fucking set piece. I can't believe they blew up a house for this. After a failed attempt at killing the detective guy in this really fun car chase scene, Chucky trying to choke and stab the guy, it results in him getting shot. We then see him find the voodoo man who told him this ritual in the first place to ask why the bullet hurt him, in which we learn that he's slowly turning human the more time he spends on the doll's body. The only way he can escape being if he transfers his soul into the body of the first person he revealed himself to, Andy. He then kills the guy with a voodoo doll, a little silly. The final kill in the movie is with this child worker who's trying to get control of Andy while he's freaking out over Chucky. That whole sequence might just be my favorite part of the whole movie. That shot of Andy watching him climb the stairs outside while no one believes him is so scary. His death is by far the most brutal too, as His death is by far the most brutal too, as Chucky slices him with a scalpel and proceeds to electrocute him until his eyes bleed. Damn. Although, I don't know, wouldn't it have benefited you to let the man sedate him so he wouldn't try to escape? Boy, I sure hope somebody got fired. I suppose the final death in the film is with Chucky himself, and if anything, this is where my only issue with the movie comes in. First of all, I gotta praise just how menacing they make him here. Again, I would never really classify most Child's Play movies as being anywhere near scary. At a certain point, the filmmakers realized that the appeal of these movies are Chucky himself, and so when you give him more screen time and make him more of a protagonist, it really lessens how creepy he is. Starts to lean more into being funny, which is fine, I'm glad they recognized that.
Ugly doll. Fuck you.
But I will always appreciate this one for going all in on how scary he is. As Andy's mom tosses him in the fire and his plastic starts melting off, us only seeing his eyes and teeth.
Fun fact, did you know?
Did you know they actually didn't tell the Chucky actor they were going to be lighting him on fire here? That's his genuine reaction. Okay, that might be a little rude, I'm sorry, Edgy. Legal issues? Oh. So fun fact, did you know they actually didn't tell the Chucky actor they were going to be lighting him on fire here? Well, some moments of this finale are amazing. Like, if I saw this shot as a kid, I would have been fucking traumatized. Overall, I think it just goes on a little too long.
This is the end, friend.
Damn, Andy, you didn't have to do him like that. It does that whole thing where everything seems fine and the evil is defeated, but oh no, they're still alive, and they just fucking abuse that trope here. He gets shot, you think he's dead, but they threw him in the fire and he's dead for real this time, but then his fucking head is blown off, his arm and leg too, but then he's fucking scrambling around in the vents now. At a certain point, I would just go crazy and start ripping him limb from limb. Cut that shit out, asshole. Still though, I think this is all only in retrospect, you know. It only gets so tedious because we know that Chucky's gonna survive, you know, no shit, there's another 7 films and a whole goddamn TV show to look at. But I imagine at the time this must have been pretty intense, before people knew this character was gonna stick around for decades. Dude, did you know this movie was originally gonna be longer? They apparently showed people a fucking 2-hour cut of this thing, and it was met with such a negative response that they decided to just chop off 25 minutes. Whoever made that decision deserves a fucking medal because it really ends at the perfect point. Child's Play in a lot of ways has aged, much like most other horror films from around the time, but it's one of those things I can wholeheartedly look past just due to how well it executes this idea, taking such a goofy looking character and managing to make him genuinely creepy at times. And the masses agreed as this film was a huge hit, no duh, making around $45 million at the time of release. Not everyone was happy though. Apparently a large group of parents were upset, tale as old as time, you can probably see why. Kids became afraid of their toys, worried they'd come to life and try to kill them. But I don't know kids, as long as your parents didn't buy them off a homeless guy who's also a rapist, I guess, then I think you're just overreacting. Still though, Child's Play's great. And with any successful film, a sequel was bound to be in the works. And so 2 years later, we got Child's Play 2. Child's Play 2 released a couple of years after the first. This was before the days in which studios could pump this shit out yearly. With Mancini returning to write, we get a near immediate continuation from where the last left off. Going into it, making a sequel to one of the most successful horror films ever, there is an immediate hurdle you gotta get over. How do you make Chucky as effectively scary when the whole draw of the first one was that slow burn, building tension before finally having that scene where we see him come to life? And so their solution to this was to say, fuck it. I know he's alive, you know he's alive, we all know the doll is alive. And so why even attempt to try and build up to it? I appreciate that take much more than if they were to simply repeat the gimmick of the first movie. Again. A couple ideas were tossed around for this one including Andy being taken to a mental hospital after the events of the first film, but ultimately it was decided that the central location of the sequel would be a foster home, Andy being separated from his mother after she's deemed mentally unfit after defending him about Chucky. It's during this we also get to learn that those other 2 police officers denied Chucky coming to life. Wow, way to go, dickheads. Now Andy, the kid with the worst life imaginable, is an orphan, being brought into the home of foster parents Joanne and Phil Simpson alongside their other foster kid, this angsty teenage girl, Kyle. Like I said before, right from the bat they don't even attempt to hide the fact that Chucky's still alive. It's a super cool scene as we see the toy manufacturers putting him back together to find out what's been causing him to malfunction, the Good Guy Company receiving a shit ton of negative press after the events of the first movie. I love that things pick up right where the last left off, us getting to see the consequences of the previous film, despite how depressing some of those consequences may be. Oh yeah, also just don't question why Andy seems a whole lot more cognitive now. It's only been like a week, I swear.
It was this bad man who got inside my good guy doll so he wouldn't have to go to hell.
Wait, how the fuck did you know that? Did he tell you that in the original, or was it just context clues? Whatever. Again, there was no time wasted in throwing you into Chucky shenanigans this time around, as he quite literally just picks up a phone and calls the orphanage to ask where Andy's been sent to. Despite that, I do appreciate this little moment here of him keeping still in the car. Harkens back well to the atmosphere of the first one, him just barely moving. But after that, the gloves are off. They really upped the edgier parts of his personality this time around.
You goddamn women drivers!
Not cool, Chucky. The killing's one thing, but misogyny is where I draw the line. I really love some of the more comedic moments they have with him here. He's a much funnier character this time around, with the horror more so coming from his goals, you know, killing a kid and stuff.
What's your name, buddy? Chucky.
Dude, poor Andy has the shittiest life ever. A serial killer wants to take over his soul. The only person to be vocal about believing him is now being mentally evaluated. He's got to move into a foster house with a dad who openly hates him. And best of all, the doll is still after him. And all because the kid just wanted a toy for his birthday. Get fucked, I guess. Okay, damn, Andy, I didn't know you were chill like that. As soon as Chucky breaks in and replaces the other doll with him, you just know what's gonna happen. Oh, Andy, here's my very favorite, very fragile statue that's been passed on in my family for 3 generations. Oh, I'd be ever so heartbroken if anything were to happen to it. Oh, fucking wonderful, you're not even trying to hide it. It borders on infuriating. I'm really hoping they don't keep this gimmick up for future movies. At least, not as much as this. There's only so many ways you can have the world not believe someone about something they are right about before it makes me want to put my head through a wall. Overall though, what I like about Child's Play 2 the most is that the film is just much more focused. Like last time, Chucky didn't even specifically need Andy for anything until that final third, but here it's his entire goal, allowing the movie as a whole to have much more variety with Chucky's attempts to get him instead of having to spend time with him seeking revenge on people we don't even really know or care about. We even get some fun subversions here, with Andy also trying to get Chucky. One of my favorite small moments in the whole thing is this POV shot of Chucky walking around the kitchen trying to find the deadliest weapon to use, only for the camera to spin around and show that it's actually Andy trying to find something to kill Chucky with. It's great. Because of this near constant cat and mouse chase, the deaths this time around come from anybody who gets caught in the crossfire as he tries to achieve this goal. And there's like double the deaths this time around. They're really up the ante. Starting off as Chucky's being put back together by the manufacturer, whose room is comedically designed to be like a children's workshop. I don't know, I'd feel patronized. We see them attempt to turn him on as one of the men there is electrocuted by him, dying instantly in a fun callback to the other electroshock death from the first one. Kill 6 comes soon after as the lackey to the company's CEO is ordered to clear everything up before their shareholders find out about this guy who's just died. You know, at that point I think I would start to think the doll was possessed. Everyone who's come in contact with the thing is either insane or dead. He doesn't heed my warning though and drives home with Chucky in the back seat. I really love how they handle this one. The guy doesn't even know that Chucky's a doll. He simply thinks a criminal has broken into his car while he was out getting some liquor.
You're dead.
Oh wait, never mind, I guess he did. Oh, there it is. This next one comes from one of the best scenes in the movie, as Chucky breaks into Andy's classroom and calls the teacher a bitch on one of his papers, perfectly setting Andy up for detention and therefore being locked in a room with him. That moment of Chucky trying to burst out of the closet is wonderful. I love how hopeless of a feeling it creates for Andy. Fortunately, he manages to escape as the teacher comes back, thinking Andy's hid inside the closet. After a long build-up, Chucky sticks a fucking air pump inside her mouth and proceeds to beat her with a meter stick. That shot of him walking is so menacing. It's so cool that they managed to get a convincing shot of the animatronic walking for real this time. Chucky's whole presentation has really been upped, and they even had Brad Dourif record his lines before filming this time, so the folks handling the animatronics would be able to more accurately have what he's saying line up with the mouth movements. It's great. It really is a marvel that they've managed to create such a convincing character. You're never taken out of believing Chucky is a real doll that's come to life. Again, there's a reason Chucky scared me so much as a kid, and it's because he just looked so real.
How's it hanging, Phil?
It's pretty great. With the foster dad getting more and more vocal about his want for Andy to be gone, especially after seeing him handling a sharp object down in the basement, we see Chucky trip him up, falling through the banister and breaking his neck. This is what finally makes Joanne turn on poor Andy, even though, well, okay, I guess just seeing the corpse of your husband would cause you to act irrational, but like, well, it's not as if Andy did it. She can clearly see the stair collapsed. Sadly, it's too late for her as well, as Andy is taken away back to foster care, with Kyle finding the other good guy doll buried in the yard. Oh my god, Chucky's alive or something! Before she can warn Joanne, it's already too late, as Kyle walks up to her room and finds her already dead, Chucky having gagged her and slit her throat. damn. With this comes my absolute favorite scene in the movie, with Chucky forcing Kyle to drive him to Andy. With how much of the first film was spent as him seemingly being nothing more than a mere doll, it's wonderful to finally get some downtime just seeing him interacting with humans. Kill 10 comes as they arrive to the childcare place, with Chucky stabbing the lady who took Andy back. Wouldn't be the most groundbreaking death out there if it weren't for her then landing on this Xerox machine and printing constant photos of her corpse. It's amazingly dumb. With all this, we reach the climax of the film. Chucky takes Andy to the good guy factory in an attempt to finally transfer his soul into his body, him doing the ritual this time without any interruption. But it's too late. He spent too much time inside the doll's body, and I must stay like this forever. I love it. Now he just goes truly mad and decides, fuck it, I'm just gonna kill the kid. This is the perfect setting for the finale, as Andy and Kyle are surrounded by good guy dolls, Chucky hunting them down once and for all. They even manage to sneak one final kill in here as this factory worker attempts to fix one of the machines, as Chucky turns it on and pierces his eyes. This was even foreshadowed early on in that scene of him getting put back together. This whole sequence rocks. It's like, even the filmmakers were aware of how drawn out the ending of the original film was, and so this time, instead of shortening it, they're just going to embrace the absurdity of Chucky coming back again and again and again. It's also just gratifying as an audience member to see him finally pay for all the people he's killed throughout the film, being constantly tortured through his own persistence. He gets his hand caught and rips it out in the most brutal way possible, sticks a fucking knife at the end of the open nub where it used to be, he gets pierced continuously, shoved in a machine that sticks a bunch of extra body parts on him, his legs are cut off and so he needs to roll around on this little dolly thing, before finally getting inflated and exploding. Someone likes that out there. With this, the film ends with Andy and Kyle exiting the factory, realizing they no longer have a home to go to. Bit of a downer ending, but they don't dwell on it much. I mean, hey, at least the evil is finally defeated, never to return. Either way, Child's Play 2 is fantastic. They trim the fat of the first one by cutting to the chase and getting right into what you want to see. Chucky killing people and saying funny quips. They embrace how comical of a scenario this is and go all in the absurdity, which I definitely think was the right move. This is an amazing sequel and a great follow-up to the first, focusing more on letting Chucky just be himself with barely any time spent on him just pretending to be a doll. Things did end rather nicely though, so I'm curious how they plan on bringing him back again after literally exploding. I imagine they're eventually gonna drop the "he's dead for real this time" angle, considering that would probably get old after a few sequels. But suppose there's only one way to find out. Child's Play 3 is the creator's least favorite in the series. Wonderful. See, the studio had so much confidence in the potential of Child's Play becoming a franchise that they ordered Mancini to write a follow-up to 2 before the thing was even finished. Smart for business and all, but as a result he's gone out and said that he had very little ideas for what to do with the third installment. And so what we got was Chucky goes to military school. Huh. I mean, not that the setting matters that much, but still, what an odd choice, right? Whatever, I mean, they know what you're here for at this point. Just look at the main posters for all 3 movies so far. First has Chucky sorta obscured, Chucky making most of his movements off-screen. Second has him more in the forefront. Chucky is now a recognizable character, so they want to make it more apparent that he's returning. I think this poster rocks, by the way, I love this guy. Whereas now it's like, it's Child's Play 3, what else are you here for? There's nothing on this to signify what the hell this one is about, which is funny because a few years back a bunch of concept posters were found, with some of them attempting to be more direct about the military angle. Looks like the final just took this one and then cropped the kid out. Get fucked. We open, once again, seeing how Chucky has managed to be revived, in quite possibly the most vague way ever. So the good guys company is planning on bringing back the doll, as it's been 7 long years since the Andy incident. With this, the old factory is being cleaned and set up to run once again.
And what are children, after all, but consumer trainees?
Very subtle. While moving this strange amalgamation of toy parts, some blood drips into a vat of goo in which it combines with the substance to create a new body for him. Okay, I'm starting to think this sequence is meant to be metaphorical. Apparently in a tie-in book, they explain this differently. A rat starts chewing at his body, some blood pours out and then gets transferred into a new good guy doll. Both are dumb. Basically, Chucky wants to kill Andy, that's his sole motivation now, and so he uses a computer to find out where he is. Military school. Again, just the saddest existence ever. Chucky has completely ruined this child's life. We learn that after the events of Child's Play 2, he jumped from foster home to foster home, getting in trouble and being an overall delinquent. Thanks for abandoning us, Kyle. I get the idea in wanting to follow along Andy throughout his life, but I really think by this point, he's run his course. But who knows, maybe I'd feel different if it weren't such a boring setting. Unique for a horror movie, that's for sure, but at the same time, there's so many characters and locations to set up here that it results in so much downtime. Especially in that first half, barely anything is happening. Biggest thing to note is that this kid winds up stealing Chucky from Andy, and like last time, he's not even trying to play up the nice doll thing, he's almost completely dropped it. But it's here he realizes that being in a new body and all, means he can now take control of the first person he showed himself to this time, the kid.
Just think, Chucky's gonna be a bro.
That might just be the best line in this entire franchise. It caught me so off guard. But yeah, basically the movie is mainly Andy trying to protect the kid from Chucky and meeting new friends. We got this nerdy guy, the mandatory love interest, and the tough, mean leader of the troop, Sheldon. I'm shaking. Not that the kid makes it any easier. He's not horrible or anything, but Jesus, he falls right into the trap I was glad Andy avoided in the first one. Makes me appreciate that performance a whole lot more, honestly. See, Andy worked as a kid protagonist because he acted like a human. He reacted to stuff accordingly. Would get mad at Chucky for not speaking up when he was at threat of being taken away from his mother, quickly realized he was out to get him, and was therefore scared when his life was at stake. Also, because we didn't physically see Chucky talking to Andy half the time, you know, Andy would just fill people in on what he was saying, it's a lot easier to buy that he wouldn't be frightened by his toy coming to life, especially because it was advertised as being able to talk. A little kid could believe something like this is possible. Whereas this kid, despite looking a whole lot older than Andy did in the first, sees nothing wrong with Chucky, even though, again, he's not putting on any sort of front.
Who the fuck are you?
Then when Andy tries to warn him, he's all like, "You're just jealous I have Chucky now." Like, bitch, that was his, you stole it.
You're a fucking drag, you know that?
Yeah, for real. And this all sucks because this movie has some really cool and intense kills, but it takes so long to get into it that I could barely remember them if I were asked. The first one is a great idea for an opener. Chucky's given to the CEO of the toy company as he's fooling around in his office. It's a little silly with him turning on all the toys, tripping him up with marbles, and then throwing darts into him before choking him with a yo-yo. But hey, fits the vibe. It's cool having Chucky play into his appearance for once and have a toy-themed kill.
Don't fuck with the Chuck!
It then takes like 30 minutes for the next one to come in. After the Colonel finds Chucky and throws him into the garbage, we see him start to yell out, pretending to be a kid trapped in the back of the garbage truck. When the guy goes in to look for him, Chucky somehow escapes and then gets to the front seat, in which he starts to crush him. It's brutal. Crushing deaths are without a doubt the ones to make me the most squeamish. It's such a terrifying concept. Let me know how you would like to die in the comments. By far the best kill in the film, though, if you could even call it, is when Chucky goes to strike the Colonel with a knife before the mere sight of him gives the fucker a heart attack. Dying on the spot, I don't know why that's such a funny idea to me. Next up, we got the barber who takes way too much pleasure in cutting kids' hair. So much so that upon finding the Chucky doll, he decides that he's gonna cut his hair too, before Chucky slices his throat with a razor blade. It's okay, a little quick, but whatever, can't all be winners. This leads into one of my favorite moments in the movie though, as the troop splits up into two for their annual competition, where they stake out in the woods plotting to attack the other with rifles, but it's okay, the rifle's filled with paintballs. What a oh. So Chucky replaces the paintballs with real bullets, but only on the team that's against Andy. It's wonderful. This is where things get a little too silly for me as Chucky starts talking to the team on a walkie-talkie, letting Andy know that he's kidnapped his love interest and will kill her if he doesn't hand over the boy. Although it does lead to this brilliant moment where he then calls the other team and tells them where the blues will be, in which poor old Sheldon gets a bullet to the chest. That's what you get for being called Sheldon. It somehow gets even more outrageous from here as the kid escapes. Chucky throws a grenade at the team, in which the nerdy guy finally has his hero moment and jumps on it, getting blowed up in the process. As Chucky then follows the kid into a carnival happening in the middle of the woods. Okay, sure. Final kill of the movie is super underwhelming as Andy and burst into the back room and find a security guard already dead in the floor, as Chucky takes the kid into a haunted house ride, which is fucking massive, by the way. I wish I had carnivals this epic. But I don't know, despite how cool this all looks, I do find the climax to be a little underwhelming. But maybe that's just due to how long and extra they've been in the past. Here he gets his face chopped off, which makes for a sweet-ass visual, but that's about it. After a bunch of running around, he gets dropped into a giant industrial fan and is shredded into pieces. But then he comes back as... No, he's done for real, I guess. Sure. Was that kid holding an Atari Lynx? And if things couldn't get worse for Andy, he then gets arrested at the end. For what? I don't know. Breaking into a ride, causing a scene, whatever. At this point, I'd like to believe they arrested him simply for being Andy. God has it out for this fucking kid. Child's Play 3 is easily the weakest of the trilogy. What few good kills it has doesn't make up for how comparatively underwhelming it all is, especially compared to the second. The biggest thing it has going for it is that Chucky is still just an inherently fun character to follow, and this movie is from his perspective just as much as it is Andy's, so hey, that might be enough for you to get some enjoyment out of it. Unfortunately though, Child's Play 3 was a pretty big flop at the box office, only making $20 million on a $13 million budget. I just don't think it was a smart direction to take the franchise in, you know, again, it's a weird idea, right? I imagine a general audience is much more engaged in the prospect of an innocent little kid getting chased down by a killer doll, compared to said killer doll going to military school to chase down that same kid, but now he's 16 years old and miserable. And so as a result of all this, the Child's Play franchise sorta halted for a while. Chucky Mania was over. Now it's time for Chucky Forces. Probably didn't help that the killer doll market had already gotten tired with a few Child's Play knockoffs. The same year 3 came out, we also saw the release of Dolly Dearest, where a spirit terrorizes this family in Mexico by possessing a weird doll. Funnily enough, the little person they got to play her for certain shots is the same guy who played Chucky. Don't look at the legal issues. Also didn't help that the Chucky series had already sparked a few controversies. There is this incredibly infamous story from the UK which happened in 1993. Despite that time difference, I heard this story all the time growing up. So much so that I thought it was happening currently and not 9 years before I was born. Long and short of it, because the details are very nasty, is that these two 10-year-old kids abducted and tortured a 2-year-old whom they had abducted from a shopping center. And in the media's ever-longing quest to find someone to blame, they had made a connection between an act they had done in the boy with the scene in Child's Play 3 where Chucky splashes someone with blue paint. Even though I don't exactly remember that happening, I literally just watched the thing. The guy got shot with a bullet, not paint. Anyways, the smoking gun was finding out that the boy's dad had rented out Child's Play 3 a couple months before the incident. They then concluded that there was no correlation, the boy wasn't even living with his dad at the time, but it didn't stop the controversy from encouraging some retailers to pull the film, along with certain broadcasters just flat out refusing to air it at all. Child's Play 1 and 2 are a-okay, but we draw the line at the third one. Either way, the franchise remained dormant for 7 long years, before eventually rising from the ashes with what appeared to be their most different take yet. Chucky on WWE.
If they want to see a real pro at work, they should go and see my new movie, Bride of Chucky, opening October 16th.
And the winner for most disgusting logo I've ever seen in my entire goddamn life goes to... You know, in Child's Play 3, they make it known that 7 years have passed since the Andy stuff, which means that film technically takes place in the future. Bride of Chucky then came out 7 years later, so I guess these movies coincidentally end up being not too far apart in the timeline. That sure worked out well. And if that title doesn't make it any clearer, then know what you're here for. Child's Play? Child's playing with who? Call that shit Chucky. So anyway, that's why the video title says the Chucky franchise. So the concept for Bride of Chucky came from the want to divert the series away from Andy. A good decision. With that, Mancini got inspired. See, the horror genre had changed quite a bit since the last Chucky movie. In particular, Scream was seen as something pretty groundbreaking for the time, being a slasher movie that attempts to point out the cliches riddled through these things with a very meta tone along with it. Because of that, he had aimed to not shy away from the comedic potential that comes with such an outrageous idea. And so along with that, longtime producer for the series, David Kirshner, had an idea to introduce a love interest for Chucky. And so with all that, they started work on what would later become Bride of Chucky. Chucky gets lucky is sometimes the tagline. From the get-go, you can already tell the tone has changed, as we open on a police officer grabbing a large bag from the evidence locker, right next to a couple not-so-subtle nods to Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees. With this, we're introduced to Tiffany, who we learn was Chucky's old girlfriend who's been searching for him for 10 years. I appreciate them not retconning the ending to 3 by having him still torn up in pieces, her having to stitch him back together. This gives us the Chucky design that I think rivals or even surpasses the original. When I see a piece of Chucky whatever in a store, 9 times out of 10, it's this incarnation. The stitches all around his face and sunken in eyes just look so cool. Anyways, basically she does some voodoo magic, something they're very aware is stupid this time around, to revive him so they can finally be together, before he lets it slip that he never intended on proposing to her, which results in her turning on him. And so, as petty revenge, naturally he kills her, and then puts her soul inside a doll. Now, if she wants to be human again, they've got to work together. See, it's here we learn that when Charles was getting chased down by the police on the night he got shot, he was wearing this mystical fucking amulet that has the power to turn him back into a human. Convenient. Also, for some reason, while all this is happening, we have this little subplot with Tiffany's neighbor, where we learn about his girlfriend. Izzy from Grey's Anatomy? The fuck is she doing here? Her policeman uncle doesn't approve of their relationship and so sabotages him any chance he gets, to which they have the most obvious solution. Let's fuck off, go to a different state, get married, and start a new life. Sure. Better yet, his neighbor has just tasked him with delivering 2 creepy dolls to a graveyard in New Jersey, with a crisp $1,000 reward. That'll set you for life in New Jersey. I've never been to New Jersey before. Yeah, you heard that right. Bride of Chucky is part horror, part comedy, part rom-com, and now part road trip movie. Would not have expected that going in. You know, I think my biggest issue with Bride of Chucky is simply how long it takes to establish all this. Like, by the time they start to go on this road trip, the movie's already 40 minutes in. Wouldn't feel too long if these movies were an hour and a half every time, meaning the road trip itself goes by in a flash. Still though, it's made up for, once again, by Chucky himself. Like I've said before, the worst thing about these films is that with him having to keep his identity a secret half the time, it meant he rarely had anyone to interact with, as he's at his best when bouncing off somebody, and so Tiffany is a wonderful addition, the two having this Bonnie and Clyde dynamic. Jennifer Tilly does a fantastic job at playing this seductive yet sadistic lady with a lust for carnage, and her voice is just iconic.
Bonnie, he punched you in the throat and that's why you sound like that?
No, he punched me in the throat because I sound like this.
There's also a way bigger emphasis than I would have expected on the large gap between sequels. Tiffany trying to catch Chucky up to speed on what's been happening while he's been gone.
It's a long story. In fact, if it was a movie, it would take 3 or 4 sequels just to do it justice.
Yeah, I know, I get it.
I'm not a...
Chucky? He's so 80s.
This isn't even the first Chucky movie from the 90s. The first one is the only one from the 80s. There are so many jokes about the fact that it's the 90s now, and that Chucky is seen as lame and out of touch, along with so many gags relating to him being introduced to stuff that's changed since last time he was around, like music or celebrities. Makes sense given this more meta tone, but in context to the universe, well again, Child's Play 3 happened like a month ago, he hasn't been gone that long. Anyways, because just as much time is devoted to this little romance between these two, along with them being confined to a small car where Chucky and Tiffany have to keep still, there ends up being so much downtime where I was just waiting to see them separate again so the two of them can continue walking around, talking, and smoking weed, I guess. So much of this movie is just Chucky and Tiffany sitting in a car, and it sucks because when shit actually starts happening, it gets pretty entertaining. This movie is at its best when they're just doing their own thing. The first kill in the movie happens right out of the gate, as Tiffany slices the throat of the officer who got her the evidence bag. It's effective at showing us this lady is just as cruel as Chucky. Something further exemplified once we're introduced to her weird poser boyfriend, who makes up fake murders he's committed just to try and impress her. After Chucky comes to life, she ties him up in the bed to let Chucky have at it. In a super brutal way too, he rips out the guy's piercing, blood spewing everywhere, as he's suffocated and unalived. Oh, can you imagine if I was one of those people? I feel like you would have clicked off the video about 35 minutes ago. Next up, technically, would be Tiffany, as Chucky escapes from his playpen and attempts to stab her, before a quick tussle knocks over her TV, landing in the bathtub and electrocuting her. Why is electrocution such a common death in these movies? From this point on, there's a clear conscious effort to have the deaths be more creative, Tiffany lamenting about how tired and predictable the old knife shtick is. And so the two of them begin to improvise as the couple pull over. Izzy's uncle sneaks into their van and plants pot in there to get the guy in trouble, but unfortunately for him, the dolls have rigged a trap. Jigsaw style. Once it goes off, a shit ton of needles launch towards his face, piercing his skull and killing him, which they then hide in a trunk for the duration of their road trip. Oh wait, no, he's alive, okay, cool. Never mind, killed him again. It's around this time Chucky also lights another cop's gas tank on fire, blowing it up to cause a scene which allows Izzy and the other guy to escape. She's just Izzy to me. Dude, I feel so bad for these kids, man. They're the Andy of this movie. Obviously, they're in the vicinity of all these murders going on, and so they get the blame. News reports emerging citing them as armed and dangerous. It does lead to this really funny dynamic, however, where their trust in each other starts to break. She thinks he's the killer and he thinks she is. But despite this, they still go through with the marriage, and while at the honeymoon suite, they're welcomed by this other honeymooning couple. However, little do they know they're actually robbers. Her stealing from them, which pisses Tiffany off. For some reason, I don't know why she cares. So as they're freaking in the bedroom, she uses a champagne bottle to smash the mirror above the bed, glass raining down and killing them instantly. I love that shot of her looking up and seeing Tiffany in the reflection. This movie isn't scary at all, nor is it really trying to be, but that one shot is genuinely creepy. Things go off the rails from here as their friend joins them to try and help the two see eye to eye, before he finds the dead body in the trunk and accuses them of murdering her uncle. And so at this point, reasonably so, Chucky gets sick and tired of the back and forth and just comes clean. This startles the friend so badly that he unknowingly walks into oncoming traffic, as he and Tiffany force the two of them to get to the dig site. After they get that amulet, they're gonna transfer their souls into their bodies. No, not Izzy! They also just hijack an RV off screen and have killed its previous two owners, gotta add to it. Things get a little, what's the word? Stupid, as the couple's solution to this bizarre situation is to ignite marital dysfunction between Chucky and Tiffany, overdoing the dishes, which gives them just enough time to distract them as they drive the RV off the road. But oh no, Chucky still has the upper hand. Kills Gravedigger off screen, RIP. We get a fairly predictable ending as all seems lost before Tiffany betrays Chucky at the last minute, leading to him killing her once and for all. Wait, does that mean I con it again?
I'll be back. I always come back.
What the fuck? Five Nights at Freddy's stole it from here? With this, Izzy traps Chucky in the grave before shooting him a bazillion times. Just in time too, as the cop in charge of the case shows up to see everything. Perfect, he makes it clear to the others that they were innocent all this time too. I was seriously getting ready to get angry, rant zone of pissed off style if this shit ended with them getting arrested like Andy. They could have ended it here, but I suppose to leave an impression on the viewer, we see the policeman approach Tiffany's charred corpse as she starts screaming. Something's happening. She's having a baby. Huh. And that's Bride of Chucky. Pretty big leap compared to the last one, right? But honestly, I'm all for it. I think this style of Chucky is way more well known than Chucky Goes to Military School. The film did super well too, making 50 million smackaroos. I imagine some hardcore fans might have felt disappointed given how far they have moved away from the genuine horror this time around. But hey, it's hard to deny that it worked. Chucky was on top of the world again, even if the film, I'd argue, isn't amazing or anything. Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of fun with it, and when it's good, it's really entertaining. But it just takes too long to get into the meat of things in my opinion. It always makes returning to it a drag. And we just spend way too long establishing the relationship between these two characters, so I honestly can't even pretend to give a shit about it, even if she was in Grey's Anatomy. Some moments come off like they're perhaps trying a little too hard to be edgy, like with the doll sex scene. That's real, don't look it up. But at the same time, I can't imagine the movie without it. This was clearly what they were going for, and it makes total sense to me why this movie has such a cult fan base of devout enjoyers. They made adding a new killer doll to their franchise work, and I think that alone is worth praise. I accept the more campy tone. Again, it's different, but felt necessary to keep the franchise going. No film came out for the next 6 years. 2004 saw the release of Seed of Chucky, originally titled Son of Chucky, which was changed for... we'll get into it. This was actually the first Chucky film directed by the creator, who's continued to direct every movie since. He seems incredibly hands-on with the series, which I can respect. Apparently, there was a lot of back and forth during the script writing process, mainly due to the studio being weary of the direction he had planned on taking the series in. As we all know, Mancini is gay, and so he wanted to pull from his own experiences and insert more LGBT themes into this one, with the studio flat out rejecting his script with the note, and I quote, "This is too gay." I mean, I guess he succeeded then. A new distribution company, and 6 years later, and the world saw Seed of Chucky, which was met with universally negative reviews, was a bomb at the box office, and killed off the franchise for the foreseeable future. Damn. But maybe the world just wasn't ready, as the film has since cultivated a pretty big following, some finding it to be merely misunderstood, many loving this bold new direction the franchise was being taken in. I think this movie's horrible. But hey, look, at least they released a short to go alongside it. This was the age of the DVD bonus feature after all, and so we get Chucky's Family Vacation Slides, a 3-minute skit of the family sitting down to watch their vacation slides, in which the whole joke is Tiffany getting mad at Chucky for having killed people on their epic holiday at a green screen land. This short actually perfectly highlights one of my biggest problems with the seed of Chucky, and it's how at this point in the series, Chucky is a one-note joke. Like, Bride of Chucky had comedic influences, but Seed is just a flat-out comedy. And while I can appreciate how out there of a plot it has, I just don't think it works very well in execution. Not to say the humor never worked for me, because I actually find myself laughing a lot during this movie.
How come nobody takes me seriously?
Nice tits.
Thank you.
Like, I didn't mention it, but throughout Bride of Chucky, Tiffany keeps talking about her mother's old sayings. Something she keeps up in this one, too. Before Chucky gets so pissed off by the end that he just says,
Christ! Enough with your mother already. I killed that bitch 20 years ago and she still won't shut up.
I don't know why that stuck out to me so much, but it was great. But those moments of laughter are few and far between, unfortunately. The rest of the film just kind of left me scratching my head. Which sucks because I actually love how this one opens. Us getting this big long POV shot where Chucky's kid dreams of being taken into a family's house as a present for a kid, before doing what you'd expect and murdering them all one by one. This is a tone that the film never returns to, and so I appreciate them at least having some kind of nod to the old movies. You know, before we actually meet the kid and... Ugh. Bit ugly, isn't he? Like, okay, I know that's the point and all. Everyone in the film commenting about how ugly he is, but... I don't know, I think this goes too far and is no longer just ugly to the people in the movie, but to the audience too. Like, at this point in time, Chucky is an ugly character to look at, but at least I don't want to vomit when I see him. I think some of the negative response towards this character comes from, well, one, having a really boring outfit like a purple shirt and jeans, but also because of the way the posters present Chucky's, seed. You know, in all these promotional things, he's a baby. And so I'm positive a general audience member would have went in expecting a wacky killer baby, like it was teased as during the ending to Bride, only to go in and be met with, well, Glenn/Glenda, a doll with gender dysphoria who has a clear apprehension towards giving into his killer instincts. You know, I think about this kind of stuff and how the public would perceive it through the lens of, would my dad think this is dumb? He doesn't know much about the internet, fandoms, or the LGBT community. He just knows Chucky's a doll who likes to kill things. And so I picture him going into this movie with that baseline idea of what Child's Play is all about. And I'm sure it would be getting a big thumbs down. At first, this film reminded me a whole lot of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which took a very meta approach to the Freddy Krueger story, having it take place on a film set for a new Nightmare on Elm Street film. Although here they didn't go that far, thankfully. See, now it's been so long since the events of Bride that a film has been put into production about the urban legend killer dolls. Glenn winds up seeing this on the news, which makes him believe that he's finally found his family, and so he's off to insert shots of LA. Wow, I can't believe he's really there. Okay, this part never made sense to me. So, he reveals that he had the amulet that was left at the graveyard at the end of Bride, despite me being positive the police would have put that shit in evidence or something, but whatever. He then uses it to revive Chucky and Tiffany, despite these dolls being mere recreations and not the ones that had their actual souls contained within. But whatever, it's a dumb movie, I get it, not a big deal. Either way, from the get-go, the movie goes off the rails as we're introduced to Jennifer Tilly playing Jennifer Tilly. And honestly, she's the best thing about this. Like last time, it feels like a completely disparate movie that they shoved Chucky into as she's a feeling actress with nothing looking up in her career. I love how willing she was to be completely self-deprecating. She sneaks away to eat chocolate while claiming to people she's on a diet. She's jealous, vindictive, and basically, her whole goal in the movie is to fuck Redman so he can let her play the Virgin Mary in his new movie. This is a Chucky film. The dolls just so happen to wind up hearing about this, with their new plan being to have Tiffany take over Jennifer's body and Chucky to take over Redman's.
Jennifer Tilly's playing me in a movie. It's absolutely perfect casting.
But that voice!
But wait, what are they gonna do about Glenda? Well, it's easy. Chucky's just gonna jerk off into a cup, and they're gonna forcefully inseminate Jennifer. Simples. Dude, there is just too much going on in this film, and that's not even the end of it. As in an attempt to find any sort of conflict, Tiffany wants her and Chucky to commit to no longer killing people for the sake of Glenn, who in and of themselves doesn't really have much to do in the film until the last third. They just kind of sit around reacting to things as the two of them try to fight back against their killing nature. At this point in the timeline, Chucky's whole character trait has been boiled down to, he likes killing things. And like I said, it's played completely as a joke. There is not a single attempt to be scary here. Which in a lot of ways I understand, is the more you see these horror icons throughout countless sequels, it's hard to find them as frightening as that first or second encounter, especially after watching them jerk off into a cup. But as a result, it's made Chucky kinda boring and predictable as a villain, and the deaths just feel like they're here for tradition's sake. First one hardly counts, but it's during the filming for the Chucky movie they're doing at the start, as they use a slinky to choke Santa before slicing his throat. Fun idea, but in execution, we've seen this a million times already. Which sucks because the next kill is arguably the best in the whole thing. As they get reintroduced to each other after Glenn revives them, a puppeteer comes in to fix the dolls. That shot of him opening up Tiffany and us seeing her organs is really unsettling, I love it. But then they fucking wrap a tightrope around his neck and pull it, his head coming off clean in what I have to assume was 3D. By this point, however, the time between kills starts to get more and more drawn out, as we later have a comedic set piece of Chucky and Glenn heading to wreak havoc in LA as Britney Spears cuts him off and he rams her off the road, her car then exploding off a cliff. You know, let's just be thankful this didn't come out a few years later or he'd be killing Justin Bieber or something. The runner-up kill for me would have to be the paparazzi guy they break into the house of. It's the only time they ever try to do anything remotely Chucky-like in the entire film. As just before he stabs the guy, Glenn startles him, knocking over a bunch of sulfuric acid and melting his face off. The effects here are surprisingly good. Tiffany then stabs Red Man, nothing all that interesting. We don't even see anything other than his reaction, pretty lame. Seeing all these kills, however, is starting to make Glenn to go mad. As Jennifer's assistant comes in to see if she's okay, Tiffany uses her hairspray and lighter to ignite the lady on fire. Her falling off the banister and dying, obviously. But wait, that wasn't Tiffany, it was Glenda! I think the implication here is that the female side of them is a deranged killer as they've finally been let out. I don't know, I'm trying my best to make sense of it, okay?
I got a few skeletons in the closet myself.
Oh god, add them all, it's a fucking cartoon. They kill Jennifer's limo driver who was in love with her, boo-hoo, and then the most reasonable thing here happens. As Jennifer is tied up and screaming, Tiffany's yelling at him to perform the ritual, the police are hot in their tail. And worst yet, Jennifer has just had twins, one boy and the other a girl, meaning Glenn/Glenda now needs to make a definitive choice on what their gender is. And so Chucky just tells everybody to shut the fuck up. He's sick of it. I'd like to imagine Don was writing the movie, got to the climax, and thought, what the fuck is all this? Look at how far astray this franchise has gotten from where it began. Chucky says fuck it. At this point, he's completely lost sight of why he even wants to go back to being a stupid old human. At least as a doll, he can do whatever he likes and just murder people.
If this is what it takes to be human, then I would rather take my chances as a supernaturally possessed doll.
That's somehow the most reasonable action taken in this entire movie. But then it just keeps going as Tiffany still wants to do the transfer. Jennifer's now in hospital. She breaks up with Chucky, and so he gives her an axe to the head, which enrages Glenn once and for all, leading to a 1v1 where he does a fucking goddamn karate move. Jennifer then teams up with him and gives him an axe as he chops all Chucky's limbs off and then kills him. Great. And then the movie never knows when to stop. We cut to Jennifer 5 years later as her nanny laments about her twins. Apparently the girl one is a psychopath, affirming that whole idea I had before. She then quits, which leads to Jennifer killing her. Add it to the list. And it's only then we get the reveal that in the brief moment of Jennifer and Tiffany laying on the hospital floor, the amulet caused the soul transfer to happen. Wonderful. Then Chucky comes back somehow for the jump scare ending. Perfect, and that shit. I wish I liked this movie, I really do. And if there's anything I can say, it's that I can see why this has such a cult fan base. It completely embraces the campy nature that comes with a story like this. It goes all in. And at the very least, I can tell it is one man's complete vision with no holding back. I just didn't like it though. The one aspect I enjoyed was Chucky's final realization that he actually kinda likes being a doll, but even then, it comes out of nowhere. I wish it were built up to more. Aside from that, I just think this movie is kind of gross to look at, has very little story to fill up the runtime and so has to resort to the characters making up their own conflicts, and Glenn/Glenda almost entirely takes a backseat for that middle portion, making you forget this was even advertised as being a movie about them. I'm somewhat glad it wasn't just, there's a tinier, eviler baby Chucky running around, but in my opinion, this wasn't much better. I think at this point, a break was needed. Time to fast forward a bit. It's now the mid-2010s. The last Chucky movie was almost a decade ago. And what's the hot new trend in the horror genre? The soft reboot. It's interesting though, during production of the film, Don described it as having been treated more as a remake of the original film, but when you watch it, not really. When he says remake, I have to assume he's referring to the tone and atmosphere rather than starting fresh, because as we'll soon see, Curse of Chucky very overtly establishes that the events of the previous movies still happened. which honestly, I would prefer. I mean, what's the point in starting over when those later movies still contained plenty of aspects audience loved? You don't need to have every character from the franchise be relevant in every single movie, you know? And so I think they made the right choice here in deciding to step away from the mess for a bit. Something else worth noting is this movie wasn't released in theaters. I have to assume Universal lost a bit of confidence in the series after Seated Chucky turned people off. And so they'd rather test the waters with making this a direct-to-DVD movie, and seeing how well it did there. I also imagine the biggest reasons why they were willing to take a stab at the franchise again was due to this diversion back to horror, rather than the comedic tone sought in Everything After Bride. Again, not that I even think that was a bad thing. I think Child's Play 2 struck a pretty good balance between horror and comedy. It's just a matter of not letting one override the other. But whatever, if you just want to go back to doing full-blown horror, I'm not complaining. Let's see what they did with this. We open on this old, run-down house as we meet this overprotective mother alongside her daughter who's in a wheelchair. Fun fact, this is actually Brad Dourif's actual daughter in real life. Cool. I'd like to imagine she's only in a wheelchair so they could reference the elevator from the first movie.
So is your mom home now, or what? Too bad.
Otherwise, I would've fucked you. She mysteriously gets this old Chucky doll in the meal. Huh. Must be a prank or something. Oh no! A CG reflection! Basically, for what I have to assume was budgetary restrictions, being a direct-to-DVD movie and all, the entirety of Curse of Chucky takes place within this one house as Nika's sister comes over for their mother's funeral along with her family, them all assuming she must have killed herself. But oh no! She has a kid! You know what that means. This is by far the Chucky movie, next to the first at least, to feature the least amount of Chucky. They're completely harkening back to that vibe of the original by having that slow burn. After the kid takes a liking to him, it's very similar to the first, where his method of communication is through the child, having them do all the talking for him. I find it interesting that this straight up just went back to the good guy design from the first film, completely ditching the ugly, stitched up Chucky. It's probably what would lead you most into believing this was a straight up reboot. Something weird but effective I find them doing in this film is to switch out the Chucky doll with a creepier version in certain shots. Although I wonder if that was just a result of the animatronic coming out not looking exactly like the other. Either way, I find it seriously unsettling in certain shots. It winds up working to their advantage, especially with the lighting.
You fucking should be.
Something I also want to praise is Don's growth as a director. You know, this looks more like a theatrical film compared to Seed, yet this gets put on DVD? What's even more interesting is that, as far as I know, the guy hadn't directed anything major between these two films, yet you can already tell there's so much more intent and thought behind each of these shots. And even if they do go overboard at times, I appreciate that while editing, they were much more willing to let certain moments linger. He really loves his long panning shots this time around. Although, like I said, they do go a bit overboard at times. Like, I get it, he put rat poison in the fucking soup, I know, you can continue. The characters this time around are also much more interesting to follow. I mean, when you're stuck in a single location for an entire film, you gotta make sure I'm actually invested in the people here, since their interactions take up just about the entire film. But thankfully, I find each of them to have at least something to latch on to. I really enjoyed our main character this time around, Nika. We see that her older sister consistently treats her like she's an idiot because of her disability, her resenting Nika for having a closer connection with their mother. The sister is clearly in a failing marriage as she tries to convince Nika to sell her mother's house as she needs the money. You also get the impression that her husband is having an affair with her nanny. Also, the priests here. They really give us a lot of insight into their lives in a natural way. I was impressed by how well they established all this without shoving it down our throats or feeling like forced exposition. We even learn about this creepy old neighbor they used to have. Wait a minute! If there's one thing I would have to shit on though, it's just how many scenes here have that horrible moment where her sister is accusing Nika of something, and she just forgets how to use her words.
Put the fucking doll down!
Don't fret though, throughout all this internal family drama, Chucky is still fucking around in the background. The main question I kept asking myself though was why? Why this family in particular? Like I mentioned before, after Nika makes her guests food, we see Chucky pour rat poison into one of them, which creates this ultra fun Russian roulette style kill where you don't know who's gonna get the axe. Even though it creates these super unnatural moments where after finding out the priest had eaten it, the people who weren't just seem like fucking rude assholes not.
It tastes funny.
Nika, could you pass me the salt?
Wait! Your daddy would like to make a toast.
Yeah, dickhead. I was a little disappointed that we cut straight to the priest already having been in a car wreck on the way home, probably because that would have been expensive to shoot. But they more than make up for it after the police remove the vehicle crushing him, which cuts his head right off, blood spurting out everywhere. From this point on, the film really ramps up after Nika becomes suspicious of the doll and decides to research him, us getting small callbacks to Andy and even the Kent Academy. I was surprised to see that referenced. Although now that we know there's all these cases of the doll being found in all these different states at all these different crime scenes, I don't know, I'd start to believe it. It's here we get the biggest twist of the movie. The sister was the one having an affair with the nanny. Oh my god. While video chatting from different rooms, the sister sees something behind the nanny, who's a fucking dumbass, by the way, and can't tell what this means. Either way, she turns around and sees Chucky standing there as he kicks over a bucket of water and electrocutes her. I'm telling you, it's mandatory or something.
Women can't live with them, period.
As the sister looks for her kid, she winds up in a spooky attic, where she hears something moving. It's the Chucky doll, but, strange. There seems to be this weird thing peeling from his feet. Oh my god. I fucking love this moment. The big reveal that this is indeed the same Chucky from all his previous movies. It's almost like Don called this a remake so much just for the purpose of this twist. It rocks. Better yet, he sticks a knife in her eye immediately after and goes full mask off as he walks down the stairs ready to kill Nika. Her sister's husband wakes up and thinks she's the one behind all this, as he ties her up and checks the nanny cam he had installed in the Chucky doll to see what's really been going on here. Before Chucky fucking sticks an axe through his goddamn jaw, holy shit. It's here we learn why Chucky was doing all this in the first place. To nobody's surprise, he was her mother's neighbor. He'd grown this stalkerish fascination with her, killing her husband and kidnapping her so they can be one big happy family. What? It also turns out that he's the reason that Nika's in a wheelchair, sticking a knife in her mom's stomach while pregnant. There's this flashback where we see that she called the cops on him, leading to him running away into a nearby toy store, that being the place where he transferred his soul into the Chucky doll for the first time. Huh? That's so stupid. What a weird retcon. Like, I guess it's cool seeing the moments that led up to the opening of the first Child's Play, but at the same time, it really doesn't seem that in character, does it? His whole motivation now is that he wanted a family? Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Bride of Chucky establish that he doesn't really want a wife? But now he's just cool with being the father of 2 kids? How's that gonna work? Also, speaking of Bride, what about Tiffany? Wasn't it made clear they were together before he transferred his soul into the doll? If he was so obsessed with this lady, why would he also be with her? Maybe this is the sort of thing that would have been more easy to swallow if this were indeed a remake, but they go out of their way to establish that each previous movie still did happen.
You remind me a lot of Andy Barkley. He was a whiny little bitch just like you.
It's just an odd decision to know this was all motivated by his deranged desire to be a husband and father, especially after Seed went in the complete opposite direction, to make it clear his motivation was that he just liked killing people. Either way, Nika eventually gets the upper hand and stabs him, before the police bust in and see a ton of blood and dead bodies, along with this psycho lady sitting on the floor with a knife. A lady who was just not gonna say anything. Okay, at this point you're asking for it. With that, she's deemed insane and sent to a mental institute, taking solace in the fact that no matter what happens, Chucky couldn't kill her. Oh, and then the movie just keeps going, as the cop takes Chucky in an evidence bag while on the phone with someone asking about payment. Wait a minute. From this point, it feels like an entirely different movie is starting. It just keeps going. She takes the Chucky doll to the post and ships him off to the little girl who's now living with her grandmother, as Chucky, after 25 long years, finally successfully performs the soul transfer ritual. Dead grandma jump scare! Okay, cool ending and all, but one question. We just not gonna clarify why Tiffany is working with him again? Seed of Chucky ended things between the two on a bit of a sour note, right? No, gonna ignore that? Okay, sure, whatever. I'll believe they just meet up off screen. Despite that, Curse of Chucky is great. Again, saying it's a 2010s remake of a classic horror movie should give you the perfect idea of what it's all about. Doesn't stand out as much as the original, but still gives people enough of what they want to see to be worth checking out. And I'm glad they still bothered giving fan service to the elements of the franchise that maybe aren't as well remembered. And this all seemed to pay off as the movie was a big hit from DVD sales. And so with that, Universal put a sequel into development that would come out 4 years later. So we open on Andy. What? Andy? Okay, sure, just jump right into it, go ahead. It was only after watching this movie that I realized Curse of Chucky actually has a post-credit scene where Chucky then gets shipped off to Andy's house. Same kid playing him too. Not a kid anymore. Although I have to wonder why he's still in the doll body if he had transferred to the girl already, but whatever, it's still cool. We even hear that he's in contact with his mom again. Joy. But as Chucky reveals himself ready to kill Andy once and for all...
Play with this.
Damn. Honestly, this opening really makes me love the relationship between Chucky and Andy. It's great. Still though, Andy has a horrible life. I can't get over that. He can't get a girlfriend because they all look him up on Google and his only friend is the doll that took his childhood away. He tortures his severed head all day, and then after doing so, they sit and share a joint.
Give me a hit off that, will you?
Get the fuck!
I love this idea that Andy has had to deal with Chucky so much that the fear of him is worn off. Now he just chills with him and smokes. Anyways, things are even worse for Nika. She's now at a mental institute where they run awful electroshock therapy experiments on her. Wonder who wrote this. She's been transferred to a different rehabilitation facility where they're going to try and get to the bottom of why she killed her whole family, something she believes herself. First of all, I want to praise the setting here. This movie stands out so much compared to all the others, and not in a bad way like Child's Play 3. The white walls are super striking, and the snowy outside only adds to the unsettling, almost liminal feeling the entire film has, these characters being isolated in this building. It's also the perfect setting for one of these movies. The most frustrating part about Child's Play is that obviously nobody believes the main characters about the doll being alive, but here it's like, of course nobody believes them, they think these people are crazy. Not a fan of all the Liam non-jump scares though.
That's awful.
If the only way to make what you're showing scary is to add a sting like that, then I'm sorry, what you're showing isn't scary. Nika is super defeated this time around, she's miserable. Even worse when the doctor brings in a Chucky doll specifically for the purpose of trying to get her over that fear. Which actually starts to work until who else but Tiffany shows up.
Did anyone ever tell you look exactly like Jennifer Tilly?
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Happy to see they're keeping that up. She informs her that after Alice's grandmother died, she became her foster mom, and is here to bring the bad news that Alice has also died. Of a broken heart, damn. They did it. They killed a kid. I'm genuinely impressed. She then gives Nika the Chucky doll from the previous movie, which they do not hesitate in showing is actually alive. I appreciate that this one takes a similar approach to Child's Play 2, in that now with there being no build-up to Chucky being alive, we're allowed to have a couple scenes here and there from his perspective, as he heads to Nika's room to kill her.
Okay, lady. You know what? You're next.
What comes of this is probably my favorite scene in the whole movie, as he comes into her room to find that after hearing about the news of Alice, Nika has attempted to kill herself, slitting her wrist. Damn. Then she wakes up. What happened? Oh, you know, Chucky just stitched her arm up to keep her alive. If she's gonna die, it's gonna be on his terms. I love it. I also appreciate us getting time with each of the patients here. Malcolm has split personalities. This old lady isn't seeing. We have this woman whose baby has clearly died, which she projects onto the Chucky doll, before we later get the reveal that she's the one who killed her baby. It's all super compelling. And the doctor here is just an all-around scumbag, putting Nika under hypnosis so he can make out with her and kiss her feet, I guess.
And they call me sick?
Dude, didn't this all apparently start because you were obsessed with a lady? I'm happy that the big twist of this movie isn't something they keep hidden from you until the very end, as it becomes fairly obvious as things progress. Especially after Malcolm gets trapped alone with Chucky for a brief moment and comes out acting pretty suspicious. Almost like Chucky's soul was transferred into him. Basically, as the movie keeps going, you start to see Chucky in two places at once. You also can't help but question how he's even doing all this when he was clearly at Andy at the start of the film. Us even getting glimpses of Andy going to the mental institution to try and convince the doctor there that Chucky is alive to no avail. You know, you could just stab him. And so around halfway through, they make it pretty apparent. There are now multiple Chuckies running around the place. Perfect. Apparently Don had been wanting to do this idea for decades, but budget restraints always got in the way of that. So now there's Chucky running all around the place trying to kill everyone. He makes it seem like the old lady slit her wrists. The doctor leaves one of the women strapped down to a chair in front of Chucky to convince her he isn't real. And upon leaving, he fucking whacks an oxygen tank into the window above her, chopping her head off, which is awesome. I mean, it's sad. The Chucky that the lady acted like was her child bursts out of the grave they buried him in and shoves his hand down her throat, ripping out her heart somehow. His arms are pretty stubby, don't know how he did this. The last third of this movie is definitely one of my favorites, as a new good guy doll is delivered to the premises along with Andy breaking in. At this point, all the Chuckies just start joking around with each other. It's like they recognized the best part of these movies was Chucky himself and thought, fuck it, what's better than one Chucky? 3. This is through a new voodoo ritual that allows him to copy his soul into something else rather than transferring it. He can do this as much as he wants. Everything just compiles on itself from this part. It gets insane. Poor choice of words. The three of them team up and murder this worker here. Tiffany comes back and kills the security guard. Us even getting to see her doll come back for a brief moment. At this point, we cut back and it's been made pretty clear that Chucky has transferred his soul into Nika's body. Her standing up and stepping on the doctor with high heels, completely mangling his face. This part's wonderful too. I know I'm just kind of listing scenes I like at this point, but honestly, I find this movie so much fun because of how crazy it all gets. This is the kind of absurdity I like in this series. Nika finds Malcolm having killed another worker and claiming to be Chucky, but she calls him out on this. He never copied his soul into his body. It was simply his multiple personality disorder that made him think he did. Wow. Then another Chucky fucking drills his head in. Damn. By the way, Nika does like the most perfect impression of her dad. The inflections are spot on. At this point, Chucky and Andy fight in a padded cell, before we get the reveal that he was the one to send him here, having planted a gun inside and killing him. But before he can do anything else, Nika comes by and locks the cell, leaving Andy there as she leaves with Jennifer and Tiffany, I guess, who is also alive. She did the copy thing too, I guess.
A true classic never goes out of style.
Wait, he said that in Bride of Chucky, I get that now. And that's how the movie ends. Oh, okay. Yeah, kind of an underwhelming ending in my opinion, mainly because Andy felt so disconnected from everything else going on, and really accomplished nothing other than killing the doll he himself sent there, and then got himself trapped. Great plan. I also just realized this movie probably has an after credit scene too. I don't know why I didn't bother Kyle!
Andy sent me. We're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, so I guess Kyle has made a return for some reason. What fan service? Andy, if you're listening, hang tough. We'll get you out. What? He's not real. Anyways, Cult of Chucky is amazing. I honestly think it might be my favorite film in the franchise. That's probably controversial, but whatever, I stand by it. It's just so fun. Usually every Chucky movie has at least one caveat for me. You know, the first is a little hard to rewatch at times because of how little we actually see of Chucky until the end. Again, that movie is mostly great as a standalone thing in my opinion. Child's Play 2 is also really good, but I oftentimes forget a lot of what happens in it, due to being right in the middle of being a horror and somewhat comedic thriller. Nothing wrong with that, it works brilliantly in the movie, but it definitely feels trapped between the two styles a Chucky movie can go for, which causes it to not stand out much to me aside from that ending set piece. Still great though. 3 is just nothing, the most bland Chucky movie out there. Not committing to the horror, but also not being very funny. Topped off with a super anticlimactic finish for the trilogy. Bride has that super drawn out setup with all these scenes of the couple that I just don't care about. Seed is shit, and Curse, while being a solid movie in its own right, feels almost like a bit of a step back in terms of following up Bride and Seed. Intentionally, of course. Again, they had a very back-to-basics approach with that one, but at the same time, it makes it hard to appreciate it as part of the Child's Play series when it spends so much of its runtime trying to be its own self-contained thing. That movie is at its best by the end when it's fully committing to the lore, even if it makes some confusing retcons to said lore. Whereas Cult of Chucky just throws you right in. It's constantly moving. Tiffany isn't just left till some end reveal, she's consistently a part of it. Andy's back for good instead of just being a post-credit scene. And he's got constant motivation throughout the film. Nika is put to great use too, as we have this almost cat and mouse chase, where Chucky is tormenting her out in the open because he knows she'll be seen as crazy. Cult of Chucky is so good to me because it feels like the culmination of all these moving parts. The only thing it doesn't acknowledge is Glenn/Glenda, but even then, that was apparently supposed to be alluded to in the film before being cut out for whatever reason. It feels like a true sequel to the previous movies, not just an attempt to try and reinvigorate interest by detaching itself from the past as much as it can. It feels pride of its lineage and has a genuine desire to evolve on what previous movies set up. And the ending, while anticlimactic, gives us the perfect cliffhanger for what could potentially be the most entertaining Chucky movie yet. Child's Play is a reboot. God damn it. And not like Curse, where it's doing its own thing while still acknowledging the past in some way. Child's Play is an alternate reality completely disconnected from all previous movies, and changes the one consistent aspect of all these films: Chucky. I saw this movie in theaters with my dad and claimed it to be the second worst film I had seen in cinemas in 2019. The first being Detective Pikachu. I will stand by that till the end of time. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Do you like Chucky, but hate Chucky? Then boy, have I got the movie for your indecisive ass. Child's Play 2019 is a Child's Play movie in name alone. It is a desperate attempt to take the killer toy concept into the modern age and sticks the name of a recognizable IP on top to ensure audiences would be interested, along with a viral marketing campaign banking off the anticipation for an entirely different movie. Genius marketing strategy, but it doesn't reflect the actual film in any way, shape, or form. Really, it attempts to do what Mithrigan successfully accomplished half a decade later. Mithrigan sucks too. It's weird because this movie isn't even that bad. There are actually a lot of elements in here I think work quite well. The lighting, for example, I think is really good. I love the contrast between the blues and reds, although I think that in turn only makes the film look more fake and therefore not as scary. This is the first Child's Play movie to have no involvement from series creator Don Mancini, instead being helmed by an entirely new team, and I'm sure they're all nice, talented folks. But this movie, unfortunately, just has no sense of a creative voice behind it whatsoever. In Child's Play 2019, Chucky is this brand new smart device. It can do everything. Control the lights, book rides for you, more, I'm sure. Already in concept alone, it falls apart. Like, in what world would the hot new smart device on the market look like an old doll from the 80s? Better yet, why would they make it look so ugly? I feel like this was in an attempt to make him look scarier. Again, going for that uncanny valley thing. But he doesn't look scary, he looks weird and goofy with his constant smile. And ugly lips. And sorry, I have nothing against Mark Hamill, but he isn't Chucky. I can't listen to his voice without just picturing Mark Hamill talking into a microphone. Song is an earworm, though. So basically, there's this disgruntled worker at the Buddy Factory. Yeah, they're just called Buddies this time around. Funny, since that's what they wanted to call Chucky in the first place. Either way, instead of voodoo magic or anything like that, after having enough of the abuse given to him, said worker decides he's gonna turn off every safety protocol before putting it on the market and killing himself. That's right, now Chucky has no real motivation. He's simply a rogue AI, which ruins the whole part of Chucky that makes him fun. That he's this grown serial killer trapped inside the body of a kid's toy. Whatever, we got Aubrey Plaza as a young single mom working in a crappy department store as she takes her returned buddy doll to her kid Andy for his birthday. Instead of being like 2, Andy is now an angsty teen, obsessed with his phone and doesn't know how to make friends. And the last thing he wants for his birthday is a Liam baby toy. Dude, I'm gonna ruin this film for you, but please take note of the fact that this movie cannot hold on a shot for the life of it. It comes off so afraid of boring the viewer that they need to have constant cuts to keep you engaged. I just could not unsee it. The first half of this movie is setting up 1, the people Chucky is gonna kill later, like Aubrey Plaza's mean boyfriend or this creepy technician at their apartment. And 2, establishing to Andy and his new friends that Chucky can basically do anything. They're watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre as he picks up a knife and tries to imitate what he's seeing on screen, before Andy gets mad at him, which he just can't understand. They make you feel sympathy for Chucky more than anything else, like he doesn't know what he's doing. They're trying really hard to make him funny and cute, but as a result you can't really take him seriously when he's going around killing people. I think the only moment in this movie that actually manages to be unsettling is after Andy's cat disappears, not long after we see Chucky attempting to choke it. As Andy lays in bed at night, we hear Chucky playing an audio file, standing expressionless in the corner as we hear the screeching cat in its last moments. That was great! But from that point on, it's just all attempts at gore, which looks good to be fair. But when I don't care about Chucky himself, and almost everybody he kills is established to be someone who deserves it, it leaves no impact. The boyfriend, for example, they have this really good twist where Chucky follows him home, us seeing that the guy has a wife and kids, you know, what a scumbag. As he's taking down the Christmas lights, we see Chucky knock him off his ladder, breaking his ankles and landing him inside a watermelon patch, okay. With this, Chucky chases him down with a lawnmower and rips his face off, leaving it as a present on Andy's countertop. Really cool and fun execution of a death scene, you know? But I can't even appreciate it for long because I can't help but think about how this creates a major flaw in making him an AI gone rogue, whose only goal is to make Andy happy. And it's that this entire film could be solved if they just told someone about this. Like, in the others, it makes sense why Chucky wouldn't speak up when in front of people. He's trying to play innocent and lure them in. However, this Chucky has no such motivation. All he wants to do is make Andy happy. He doesn't even really see a problem with killing people. And so therefore, he'd have no reason to put on a front if Andy were to tell his mom or the policeman that lives next door. Or better yet, call the fucking toy company and ask why he's acting weird. I know it's a horror movie and trying to apply logic to them isn't the smartest thing to do, but like, they're not even gonna try show this to someone when Chucky would have no reason to hide or deny what he did?
What do I do? Do I call the cops? No.
Yeah, no, sure, that's on logic. It's not like if someone were to just check his chip, they'd see his safety protocol turned off. Wait, why would that even be an option? Whatever, Andy rips out his power cord and sends him to the garbage. Or he's picked up by the creepy technician who puts him back together to sell on eBay. He starts cutting the guy's legs, which leads to him standing on top of a table with a buzzsaw on it, sure smart. The table falls and so he grabs the metal pipe above him before Chucky makes it hotter and hotter. He can't just jump down, there's a very tiny buzzsaw below him. With this, we're led to the launch of the Buddy 2. There's old buddies, blonde buddies, and even a bear buddies. Before we can get there though, Chucky has one more stop to make. This old lady neighbor called Andy's friend, and so he's gonna self-drive her car to spook her before fucking teleporting inside and stabbing her. Sorry, I just don't care for this movie at all. I can't even pretend to be engaged. It's just so formulaic. You know exactly how things are going to play out from the get-go. They even try to have that moment where the people think Andy made it all up. He loses his friends briefly as he overhears them talking about the possibility that Andy was just lying about this all. But it doesn't really work because they saw Chucky acting out of control. They saw Chucky with a knife and cut Andy's arm with it. It's like they had the beats they knew they had to hit with a story like this, but didn't consider how certain moments completely dismantle the whole thing. Next kill is cool at least, as during the launch, Chucky stabs a guy in a mascot suit as he takes the head off and spurts blood all over the kids. Whoa. The buddies have now gone out of control and are wreaking havoc all over the store. The Evena bears are eating people and they're sending sharp drones to cut everyone. Everyone manages to escape before Andy sees that his mother has been kidnapped by Chucky. He's gotta go save her. One big, epic action sequence later where, oh, Andy, don't swing around like that, you're gonna snap her neck. Right before Chucky kills Andy, he starts singing the song to remind him that they were once friends. And in this moment of weakness, Andy chops his mom from the rope. The fall snapped the other guy's legs, but she's fine. With this, Chucky's defeated. But not before a cool CG jump scare. Chucky's now dead, and everybody lives happily ever after. Let's go home. Although we do end on a shot of a bunch of new Buddy dolls getting shipped out, one sharing the exact same glowing red eyes. Somehow, I guess another employee turned off the safety protocol or something. And that's Child's Play 2019. It sucks. I know I was very sarcastic and mean throughout all that, but for real, I don't think this is a bad movie at all. If it didn't have the Chucky name attached, I'd probably be a lot more receptive. But by God, it is painfully uninteresting and not where I wanted to see the series go after Cult of Chucky ended on such a cliffhanger. Again, not only do I find it to show a real lack of understanding of why this IP was so massive in the first place, but also shows a lack of respect for the creatives who had been slowly building this franchise for over 30 years. Apparently this all came from MGM, who had the rights to only the first Child's Play, before it was sold to Universal for the sequels and onwards. They had tried to get Don involved as an executive producer on this one, however, he pretty publicly declined. Not that I can blame him. Imagine your series being gone for almost a decade. You finally get the chance to make another two, but straight to DVD. A distribution method obviously not as respected as a theatrical release. And suddenly, this company you hadn't worked for in 30 years waltz on in and decides they're gonna make their own movie banking off the brand recognition of your IP. It's gotta cause a lot of fears. What if people like their version more? Suddenly, that series starts getting sequel upon sequel, meaning there's no room for you to compete in theaters anymore. Even worse, what if it's so bad that it further tarnishes the IP altogether? Universal now doesn't want to make any more Chucky movies because that one feels so bad. I suppose in a way it was a good thing that it was so middle of the road, being forgotten about in an instant. Like, I can understand wanting to do your own thing, and in a lot of ways I think there were good ideas behind the approach they took here. If you remember all the way at the start of the video, I talked about how Don's initial idea for the series involved Chucky and Andy having this connection, Chucky killing his enemies. This concept was going to make a comeback even sooner in a scrapped Child's Play remake from 2010 that was being developed by Don, that eventually fell through and turned into Curse of Chucky. But that's extremely similar to the setup here, especially with characters like the mom's boyfriend. If Child's Play stuck to that initial concept, I'm positive there would have been a lot of scenes that mirrored what they eventually did in 2019. But at the end of the day, Child's Play has been Cheney's creation. Chucky is his. And to go out of your way to make a new film in the series without wanting his direct involvement is pretty scummy in my opinion. Like I've mentioned before, I'm not even a fan of all the previous Child's Play movies, but even with something like Seated Chucky, for as many problems as I have with it, I can't and won't ever say that I'm not grateful something like that was allowed to be made, something with such a specific voice. And clearly, you know, it resonated with a lot of people. Who resonates with Child's Play 2019? And so thankfully, it's a good thing that a couple months before the reboot, a new Chucky project was announced to be in development. Not a theatrical film, not a straight-to-DVD movie, but a TV show. I heard a lot of good things about the new Chucky series that aired on Sci-Fi around the end of 2021, but it wasn't until my Mega Chucky Marathon last year where I finally got to check it out, and I quit after one episode. I think I might have been a bit Chucky'd out at the time, and so the prospect of watching through 3 seasons at 6 hours apiece was a tad too much to stomach. I honestly think another part of that was the first episode not really drawing me in as much as I would have expected. Not that it was bad, more so just wasn't giving me an idea of where things were headed. So we meet this new kid, Jake, who just picked up this mysterious doll from a garage sale for his art project. He's got a dad, mom, deadbeat dad who wants to ignore the fact that he's gay, and just about everyone in this town is a complete asshole to him. Especially his cousin, Junior. I mean, how are you gonna be a bully with a name like Junior? I just was not a fan of any character they were presenting me with. Like I said, Junior's a massive asshole, his girlfriend is an even bigger bitch. She is one, I can call her that. And the only other character we're really introduced to is this podcaster in his class, Devin. podcasts. The first episode is mainly just introducing you to all these guys and quickly establishing what a crappy life Jake has. But what I find myself wanting most throughout all this was Chucky. He doesn't really do anything until the end, where he gets on stage and calls out Lexi for being so cruel.
She's into Pokemon porn.
He knows what Pokemon is? I will say though, once Chucky started doing stuff, I got invested. He, naturally, electrocutes Jake's dad, killing him, which forces him to now live with his cousin's family in their giant mansion. This is where the series truly kicks off.
And I'm your friend to the end. Heidi fucking ho.
The best thing I can say about Chucky Season 1 is that it's definitely one of those series that gets better as you go along. It allowed me to think back more fondly on that first episode, because it was made clear to me that it was just setting up all these moving parts that would eventually collide as the season goes on. I think what also confused me so much with the first couple episodes was that when Chucky finally did start talking, it was weird that he clearly had no intentions of killing Jake. They mostly just sit around chatting.
You know, I have a queer kid.
What? He mentioned— Instead of killing anyone in sight this time, Chucky's motivation is to have Jake become a killer, trying to convince him to kill Lexi, which is something that really confused me for the first few episodes, which may not sound like a lot in retrospect, but these episodes are like 45 minutes long, so it was about 2 hours of wondering why the fuck he would even care about being a mentor. What I eventually realized is that's exactly what the show wants you to ask yourself, as any time he gets alone with certain targets, he eventually tries to convince them to take out whoever's given them trouble. Lexi's little sister, he tries getting Lexi to kill Jake, and eventually Junior, who's been getting increasingly more jealous and angry of Jake for coming into his life.
I don't need you offering me popsicles in my own house. You know what I mean?
What a loser. Let me get that out of the way. The acting in this show can sometimes leave a bit to be desired. I think Jake is fine. Lexi, Devin. I was confused as fuck to see that Lexi's dad was the doctor from Cult of Chucky, but then I looked it up and realized they're both different characters. But everyone aside from then had me laughing at how strange their delivery was for a majority of these lines.
Costumes, Coronas, and candy. And we're not talking M&Ms.
You talk like you're in a Darman video. CM goes for the sound design. I got serious 13 Reasons Why vibes. Doesn't help with how melodramatically characters like Junior talk all the goddamn time. This show is definitely more of a mystery thriller than horror. So much so that when Chucky is killing anybody, they usually have this really unfitting, sappy pop music playing in the background like, whoa, she's slow-mo falling out of this building. The shot is so cool. Dude kills everyone's parents throughout the show. Jake's, Devin's, Lexi's dad. He's relentless. Even killing Junior's mother, as we just saw, which eventually causes him to go mad. And, under Chucky's influence, he kills his own father. Damn, well, that's angst. I was surprised to see they spent a lot of time delving into Charles Lee Ray's backstory, us learning about his first kill. His mother. This show goes right back to Seeded Chucky, where he's just a deranged psycho from the get-go, eats razor blade apples as a kid, doesn't give a shit about anyone other than himself, and eventually goes into foster care, adopting this almost Peter Pan-like persona, searching for kids he thinks he can inspire before heading out the window and moving on to the next. I appreciate getting more insight on his history, even if I do find his backstory to not add much to the overall season. I was much more engaged when we would flash back to events happening after he was already the Lakeshore Strangler, showing how he met Tiffany in the 80s. It's the 80s, can't you see the filter? Things all changed for the series in episode 5, when we're introduced to Nika and Tiffany. I mean, Chucky and Tiffany, they switched bodies, and I think I would have been much more surprised to see them if it weren't spoiled by the opening credits. Anyway, they've been killing people together for a while now. However, every now and then, Nika manages to snap out of it, confused and dazed as to where she is. It's here we learn that Tiffany has taken a liking to Nika, likes her more than Chucky, but there's no time to focus on that as we learn that the two of them have a big plan to enact. I was so confused when episode 6 then started on these two random census guys going around houses and looking for Chucky dolls. Before halfway through the scene I was like, wait a second, that's fucking Andy and Kyle, they're here too? I guess Andy just escaped that place after Cult of Chucky somehow, I don't know. Either way, I'm glad we're finally getting a payoff to that cliffhanger, as we learn that since then, Andy and Kyle have been going around and slowly killing off all the different dolls that Chucky had split his soul into. And now, there's only one more left. Not if Chucky has anything to say about it though, as we learn about his master plan, which honestly is kinda genius if you ask me, and the perfect place to take things after Cult established this new power. Basically, Chucky needed to find any kid to kill someone, as doing so would power an entire army of Chucky dolls, which Jennifer plans to ship out all across America, resulting in complete unstoppable Chucky carnage. I'm not sure how a random kid killing someone powers that, but whatever, it's already dumb, I can deal with it. Although I will say, I was constantly taken out of it during these scenes where we'd have all these great legacy characters, you know, Chucky, Tiffany, Nika, and then there's Junior standing around trying his best to look like he belongs here. Get out, you fucking loser. This all builds up to a finale where everything is going according to plan. The dolls are about to be shipped out as the town gathers together for a big event. Like Seed, though, the biggest thing to get in the way of Chucky and Tiffany's plan is each other. Chucky wants Junior to kill Nika as he's jealous Tiffany likes her more than him, but before he can do that, Tiffany kills Chucky. We even learn here that Tiffany was the person to call the cops on Charles that night. Wait, so does that mean the stuff with Nika's mom still happened? Wait, okay, I mean, what the fuck was the getaway driver for? Ugh, whatever.
Kill the twink.
If this sounds complicated, by the way, it is. But I suppose that's the problem that arises when you establish your main bad guy can basically clone himself. Either way, Junior eventually redeems himself by denying Chucky's influence, both of them stabbing each other. Hard to feel sympathy, though, when you killed your own dad.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry.
Oh, shut up, you loser.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Honestly, it's hard for me to care about Lexi either. They spend the first half of the season setting her up to be such a one-note bad guy, literally dresses up as Jake's dad for Halloween. But once they both team up to take down Chucky, suddenly all the negative attention goes on to her mom instead. I also noticed this really obvious pattern with the parents where right after having a somewhat pleasant moment with their kid, they die right after. Happened with Junior's mom, Devin's, happens between Lexi's mom and dad. Got a little predictable after a while. But whatever, Chucky's having a standoff with Jake where he then calls him gay. And so Jake gets mad and fucking chokes him until his eyes pop out. It's rad. With that, Andy takes over the truck that's shipping out the Chucky dolls, and everything seems to have worked out. Nope, never mind.
I'm Tiffany, the doll, not the person. It's complicated.
Nothing has ever been truer. Gets even weirder as we end on this cliffhanger of Nika waking up inside Tiffany's LA house, where to ensure she never leaves, she's amputated her arms and legs. What? And that's the end of season 1. I took notes for the kill count for the entire season, but thankfully, or maybe unthankfully for me as I just wasted my time, Chucky ends by doing the work for me. Thanks.
By authors such as Austen, Shakespeare, Mancini.
Wait, I'm just editing this and realized it's pronounced Mancini. You fucking lied to me, YouTube tutorial.
Mancini.
That was all very scatterbrained, I know. With a story this complicated, it was hard to condense my thoughts into a timely manner, but overall, I enjoyed season 1 of the Chucky show. If I had stopped a couple episodes in like I did last year, I'd probably tell you it was slow, boring, and sucked. I did not care for a majority of these new characters and find the whole whodunit murder mystery with the cops blaming Jake to be so tired and overdone. But once it got going, I really started having fun. It's cool to have this big 6-hour-long epic that has the room to incorporate all aspects of this franchise. Made me understand the slower beginning was more likely for the sake of easing in new viewers, even later having flashbacks to older movies like Seed Chucky at times. Better yet, the show got good enough reviews and viewership to get a second season. You gotta cut to... I was so worried I would absolutely despise Chucky Season 2 for one simple reason.
Let's go, Batman, to the Batcave!
Shut up!
It opens with Jake having moved in with a new foster family with this little shit being his new younger brother, and he's by far the worst kid character they've ever introduced to this franchise. I hate him. His whole gimmick is that he starts half his sentences by yelling, "Holy!" then followed by whatever he was gonna say, and it got old after, like, the first time he said it. But thankfully I didn't have to worry about it being an annoyance for too long, as by the end of episode 1 he blows up. Wait, what? With this, Jake is blamed, naturally, and so he, along with Devin and Lexi, are sent off to Catholic school where the entirety of the season takes place.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna pray?
I appreciate this different setting, as it does a good job at restricting these characters. I imagine things will be slightly less complicated now that everything going on for the most part is confined to a single location. Fat chance. This season is somehow even crazier than the first. So much happens and they just keep piling it on. For example, it's here we learn that Bride of Chucky is a movie in this universe. Was that the film they were shooting at the start of Seed? Did they even finish that movie after Jennifer Tilly got her soul transferred? I don't know. Either way, the biggest thing that caught my attention in the first episode was this child psychologist giving Lexi's little sister a doll to help get over her sudden fear. The doll in question being Belle. You know, the one that Tiffany got her soul trapped in Bride of Chucky. Yeah, because of the last season taking so long to build up to the franchise's legacy characters, I'm happy to see this one begin with them already being here. Nika and Tiffany are major players in this from episode 2.
I know you went through all of Jennifer Tilly Simpson's money.
I was so confused what the joke was here. I thought maybe there was a chance whoever wrote it just mixed up The Simpsons with Family Guy, before I looked it up and learned that Jennifer Tilly used to be married to Sam Simon, one of the original 3 guys behind The Simpsons, before they eventually divorced and she took a shitload of his estate. She's so shameless with the self-deprecation, I love her. The big mystery this time around has to do with the fact that the Chucky who's shown up at the Catholic school has seemingly no interest in killing the trio. Instead, he seems to be sending intel to this mysterious third party known as the Colonel. Things take a turn, however, as the 3 of them, somehow, brainwash Chucky and turn him into a good guy, for real, resulting in the Colonel sending in a bigger, buffer Chucky to take care of things. I'm surprised this is the first time they're really playing around with Chucky's build. I think as a result of all this madness, along with there just being way more characters, including a new kid at school who becomes their friend whose whole character trait is being quirky, it ends up with the mean trio, like last time, being the least interesting aspect to me. There's an attempt to evolve from last season. They all get a tiny little arc, but they don't do much to really keep me engaged with it. They're pretty overt about Lexi now being on drugs, them eventually having this lead to her needing to learn to be open about her feelings to her friends, as they can help her get through it. As well as finally acknowledging that she can't blame her mum for all her actions, which I thought was alright, while Devin and Jake are mostly confined to relationship issues. See, they establish early on that after Jake moved away, none of them really kept in touch over the past 6 months, along with Devin starting to get sick and tired of how focused Jake is on all the Chucky business, wondering if any of them even have anything in common with each other. The only issue I really have with this is, in concept it's fine, but they never got together until the very end of Season 1, and all we saw in Season 2 was them sharing a brief kiss before that 6-month time skip. And so I can't really say I'm all that invested in their relationship working out. If anything, I agree with Devin, they do have nothing in common. And it almost seems like they're aware of this, as near the end of the season we get this little moment where they all sit around and wonder if they'll turn into Andy and Kyle. No jobs, no lives, just constantly on the lookout for Chucky. Oh shit, yeah, Andy! We learn that Andy is still alive, after presumably having been killed in a crash that took place directly after Season 1 ended. But we later learn that the Colonel, this bald Chucky right here, has not only been keeping him alive the past year in a cabin in the woods, but also has been cannibalizing him. Okay, is it cannibalism if he's a doll with the soul of a human? How does that work? Can we fact check this? That wasn't the biggest shocker of the season though, as after almost 20 years since their last appearance, we finally get reintroduced to Glenn and Glenda, them returning to visit their mom. This Jennifer Tilly stuff takes up about half the season. There's even an entire episode solely dedicated to her in this fun murder mystery parody, where she tries to keep people from finding Nika locked in her house. We also get introduced, I'm telling you, there's a million characters. We also get introduced to Jennifer's twin sister, who is real, apparently, and look it up, as she starts becoming suspicious of her sister's true identity, in which we learn that the real Jennifer Tilly is still alive, trapped inside the original, Tiffany doll from Bride of Chucky.
For years, I've made you money playing online poker and voicing Bonnie on Family Guy.
I'm glad they finally acknowledged it. Things, unfortunately, only get more complicated as we learn that the child psychologist from the start of the season who sent all of them here was actually Charles's psychologist when he was a kid, and the person who encouraged him to continue killing, her making a deal with everyone to exorcise Charles' soul out of the doll's body. Meanwhile, Tiffany is on the run from murdering Jennifer Tilly's sister, but obviously everyone thinks that it's Jennifer Tilly killing her own sister, and so she decides that she wants to now go back into the doll body to evade the law before Jennifer Tilly, who, but is still inside the doll's body, gets hit by a fucking truck and dies. And so now she needs to find a new one. I wonder where she could possibly find it. There's also this dumb retcon where they establish that Chucky can only split off into a good guy doll, and Tiffany can only go into a Belle doll, despite Cult of Chucky specifically stating that he can split his soul into anything. Boy. Sure, all the while Glenn or Glenda, I don't know, I got confused pretty quick, decides to help Nika and go against her murderous mother as the other one, again, it could be either, is helping Tiffany do all this before the Chucky comes out of Nika once again and shoots Glenn. or Glenda. With this, they're dying, and we learn that if one dies, then the other does too, leading to them making the tough decision to go back into the Glen doll's body, them leaving the show and fucking off. How is this more complicated than Saw? I didn't think that was possible. As the old lady is escaping with Chucky, Andy shoots him in the head once and for all, but we later learn that right before this happened, Chucky swapped souls with the old woman, meaning he's still alive. But luckily, he has a backup doll to put his soul into. They're infinite. Aren't these good guys gonna run out eventually? They just beeline towards a conclusion from here. It's suddenly Christmas time as Tiffany and Chucky both break into Lexi's house with Chucky fucking chainsawing her mother. Great, now they're all orphans. Lexi also then chainsaws the final Chucky once and for all. Damn, now he's never gonna come back. We also have their teacher who, as far as I remember, never appears in the entire season until now, is coming in to help them get Lexi's sister back. Jennifer, who, is Tiffany, also takes her little sister's Belle doll, while at the same time convincing her that she's the kid's real mother, taking Lexi's little sister. I should have mentioned that. By the way, this kid fucking sucks too. Kids just are awful. And then we fucking fast forward 3 weeks as Tiffany is hiding out in New York, where she gets a phone call from Nika, who now has a bloody prosthetic arm as she lets her know that she's hunting her down. She then decides now's the time to do the soul transfer with the Belle doll. Not sure why she waited 3 weeks, but for some reason, it doesn't work. And that's when we get the reveal that the Belle doll wasn't a Belle doll at all. It was, in fact, another backup Chucky. Ooh. That's the end of season 2. 22 kills. The wrestler was the best one. I'm so shocked that despite that massive info dump, season 2 somehow manages to be somewhat coherent. I'm impressed. The only characters here to get pretty conclusive endings are Andy and Kyle as they walk off together. They even replay the ending of the second movie to go along with it. There's this great parallel where despite being 30 years later, they're still in the exact same spot they were then, not knowing where to go or what to do. I love that. This is definitely an improvement over the first, and I think that's simply down to the fact that they knew going in that audience would have already been caught up to date with past events, allowing them to just go crazy with the fan service and bringing everyone in. I was gonna say that the "we killed Chucky, oh no, there's actually a backup shtick got kinda old after a while, but by the end reveal, I finally understood that's the fucking point. He just won't stay down. Saying that, I'm not exactly sure what they're building up to for next season other than this massive cat and mouse chase where Chucky and Nika are trying to kill Tiffany, and the kids are trying to kill Chucky and Tiffany to rescue Lexi's sister. But at this point, I'm along for the ride. Let's see where this goes. So season 3 of Chucky takes place in the White House. What? Yeah, that was quite possibly the last thing I would have expected. The big mystery this time around being, well, why the fuck did he want to go to the White House? Yeah, I was surprised and honestly pretty happy to see that for the most part, season 3 of Chucky felt pretty self-contained. Instead of feeling the need to throw in every character from all over the franchise, I like that this time around they only bring in who's necessary. Most notably, Glenn, Glenda, Andy, and Kyle are absent aside from a brief moment of us seeing Chucky brutally stabbing him before it's revealed to have been nothing more than a dream. There's something worth mentioning. The gore this time around has been ramped up to 11. The show still never aims to be scary at all, but I feel like they more than make up for it with how violent the deaths are. Although you can definitely feel them straining their budget at times, some of the green screening and CGI really takes you out of it, especially near the end. Whatever, it's been a year since the events of season 2. The three of them now live with their teacher, Jenner Sever, and they're all cool social media influencers using their followings to help them track down not only Chucky, but Lexi's missing sister too. Although, I don't know, the kids seemed pretty deranged last time you saw them. Would you even want to have them back? Things really pick up, though, once they see a bunch of murders happening at the White House, spotting that the president's kid seems to have his own good guy doll. Huh. Now they gotta get in the good graces of their teenage kid in order to infiltrate the White House. This time around, Tiffany is pretty separate from the main storyline for the most part. But Mark, didn't last season end with her supposedly dying? And to that I say, you really think this franchise would commit to killing off a legacy character? No fucking way. We learn that right before Chucky killed her, the police burst in and arrested Tiffany for, you know, all those murders and stuff. I really like that we eventually get to see the court case that happened with her too. They add a plot point that Nika was exonerated of all her supposed crimes after Tiffany took the heat. But because of that, she's got the death penalty. The entire season basically showing us her prison life building up to the eventual execution, where she starts creating voodoo dolls of all the guards to do her bidding as part of this big plan to break out. It's a very entertaining subplot. Honestly though, I find what this season does best is give Chucky more development.
fuck you, my 3-gun.
See, look, even he agrees with me. Throughout the first and second, he was definitely treated as more of this looming threat, us rarely getting any moments from his POV that weren't flashbacks. However, here he starts to notice that his hair is falling out, he's getting wrinkles, he's aging and doesn't know why. It leads to this very amusing scene where he goes to visit a doctor specializing in voodoo, who just winds up looking like a normal fucking doctor, who informs him that ever since his exorcism in Season 2, the god Damballa has rejected him. Because of that, he's gonna slowly get older and older until he dies. Unless he can make 6 sacrifices, and so he figures where's the most evil place on earth to enact these crimes? The White House. Now, as I've said, I really enjoyed this season, but if you were already not a fan of the show's more comedic tone, and even more so the silly elements introduced in Bride and Seed, then you are not gonna like this, as it's by far the most batshit fantastical season yet with the shit it introduces. I mean, I'll just get right to it. Ghosts. I don't know why this was so shocking to me, given the series revolves around a possessed doll and all. But at the same time, once the president and other residents of the White House start seeing and interacting with ghosts, I was immediately put off. It just seemed too strange. Like, just because you establish that possession and stuff exists in this universe doesn't mean it's going to be natural to include every paranormal thing you can. But honestly, as the season went on, I actually started to like it. And it's again in relation to what it means for Chucky. He and Tiffany have a brief phone call where he lets her know that he's dying, and because of that he finds no joy in killing anymore, which in turn leads to her motivating him by saying that before he leaves this world, he needs to go out on a bang. And so what's he gonna do? Nuke the world. I mean, sure, why not? This plan eventually falls through as Chucky winds up shot and dying, where we then meet him in the afterlife where he meets Damballa, who decides to give him one final chance at life, but only if he makes as big of a bloodbath as he can as a ghost. It's also just nice getting to see more of Brad Dourif on screen. Much like every season as I've learned so far, things only get more crazy, as they attempt to then do a seance on Chucky's spirit before they learn that the only way to truly defeat him is to convince him to sacrifice himself, where Jake then makes the decision to allow himself to be injected with a serum that will kill him for 5 minutes, so he can travel into purgatory and find good Chucky from Season 2, in an attempt to convince him to kill himself. At this point, it just turns into Insidious for a little bit as he finds the ghost of his dad and reconciles before finding all the Chuckies gathered together. Oh boy, here we go, it's getting complicated again. Anyways, he finds good Chucky, but before he can convince him, he realizes they were all just trying to distract him, so that the real Chucky, who they call Chucky Prime, can possess his body while he's trapped in there. And so, okay, I need a breather. Alright, and so, Chucky comes back pretending to be Jake and tells them where to find Lexi's sister, at the house of Wendell Wilkins, the creator of the Good Guy doll. Whoa. Also, sorry, as I'm editing this, I'm realizing I'm looking at this guy's face. This is the guy who gets his face melted off in Seed of Chucky. What the fuck? From here, he reveals that he not only has Lexi's little sister, who is as deranged and annoying as ever, but also the prototype of the Good Guy doll. Wait a sec. Yep, so for the millionth time, Chucky transfers his soul back into a doll. The very last one for real, we mean it. Better yet, Tiffany has just showed up after escaping prison with Nika hot on her tail. And better yet, Wendell also has the prototype for the Belle doll too. And so Lexi's little sister drives the two of them away, both back in their doll forms together for the first time in 20 years. Wow. Oh shit, yeah, then Nika bursts into Wendell's house where she finds... Ew. Like I said, the effects really take a nosedive in these last few episodes. And, that's where it ends. Okay, pretty big cliffhanger to leave us on, but whatever, we'll see what happens next time. Right? Oh. It was cancelled. There's no definitive reason as to why the Chucky series was cancelled as far as I'm aware. I remember seeing a pretty big outcry about it when the last season dropped, so it must have had some kind of fan base. But if I were to guess, it was probably a mix of things. First being budget, you know, bad effects aside, this definitely seemed like the most expensive season to produce with just how many unique sets it has, along with all the practical effects. But also, maybe Sci-Fi just thought 3 was enough, and didn't come to that definitive decision until it was too late to change the ending. Most shows are lucky to get 3 seasons nowadays, with the advent of streaming giving companies user data at an incredibly quick rate. And so maybe their algorithmic overlord just decided one day that Chucky Season 4 wouldn't be as viable as pursuing something else. Damn. And so I guess Jake, Lexi, and Devin remain trapped as dolls until the end of time. See ya. But still, cliffhanger aside, I think this is probably my favorite season of Chucky. Not as boring and melodramatic as the first, not as all over the place as the second, it strikes a good balance. although I do find it hard to recommend now that we know there is no real ending for it. Even still, I think it's worth checking out. Again, those first few episodes are a drag, but it picks up, promise. But as of today, that's me caught up to date on Chucky. Funnily enough, the day I'm putting this video together, they've just released a documentary on Shudder about the development of the franchise, so I'm excited to eventually check that out too and learn more about the behind the scenes of the series. Okay, if you're wondering why this video took a couple extra days than I advertised it as being, I made the community post about it, it's because I decided, okay, I want to make sure I watch the Chucky documentary actually before I upload in case there's some big revelation or some cool history that I would want to include in the video. And after finding the time to finally sit through it, I realized I actually thought the documentary was really bad. And not because it was like put together poorly or was a bad documentary, and it was more so just because it really gave you nothing. It felt like a behind-the-scenes video you would get on a Chucky DVD. For the first hour of this 1 hour, 30-minute documentary, you're getting a couple interviews of the people behind each movie just talking about each one as it goes on, you know? Upwards to Cult of Chucky, which I think is a real shame as it completely skips out on the discussion about Chucky Child's Play 2019, which I felt like was a big missed opportunity, and I get maybe it's because they didn't want to spend time talking about this project they had no involvement in, but I think I would have at least been interested in hearing about that. But even in the movies that like people like Don Mancini did have involvement in, I felt like I was just getting very basic surface level knowledge about them, and maybe some B-roll in the background that was interesting to look at, but there was really no new bits of information that you would get from that you wouldn't already have by me looking through the Wikipedia article. And towards the end, it completely diverts into the daughter of the guy who was puppeteering Chucky after Bride of Chucky, just kind of talking about how she grew up with Chucky, and like it was hard having her dad work on the movies because it meant he wasn't with her. It was like he had this whole second family, and I felt like that's a fine thing to want to explore, but like when you're already done talking about Cult of Chucky, to completely divert into this completely separate movie where and it's not like she was even a present theme in the documentary beforehand. This is like when she's introduced is already after they're talking about Cult of Chucky, and to me it just felt like this weird tonal shift where now it's all about her, and it's all about her experiences having a dad who worked on Chucky, and it's like, I came here for Chucky, not for you. And then that's when it all clicked, and it was like, oh, that's why it's called Living with Chucky. And then I realized, oh, this girl is in the poster. But the first hour of the documentary just did not convey that at all, and there was nothing really interesting being said other than, oh, having someone in your family, like having a parent work on a movie is hard because you rarely see that parent, but nothing is really said other than that. And in fact, I oftentimes find the comments towards that being made by Fiona Dorff, the daughter of Brad, the voice of Chucky. I find those to be way more interesting than whatever the daughter of the puppeteer had to say. And I just felt like it was a really big wasted opportunity to have all these people, like they had all these people, every like thing was in place to make this like a really good documentary talking about the franchise, but it feels like they just didn't know what to ask these people, and they just kind of asked like, what was your experience working on this? And that was it. Whereas like they completely gloss over like Universal not wanting to do like Seed of Chucky because of fears of it like not being the right market they want. They completely gloss over the fact that the franchise was dormant between Chucky, or Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky, and they completely gloss over the dormancy between Seed of Chucky and Curse of Chucky. And it's like, that's interesting. I want to know how these people reacted to these movies not performing as well as they'd hoped. And all they really say about Seed of Chucky is, well, the world wasn't ready for it. It's like, but I want to hear more about what it was like at the time, not you like looking back. And what brought you back to the franchise after like 10 years, or what you were doing in that downtime. And then it became evident towards the after Cult of Chucky that no, this is all just building to this weird focus on the daughter of the puppeteer, but what she has to say isn't interesting or engaging, or it's not like, all right, I get it! If you have a very surface level view of the Chucky franchise, or you've only seen the movies and haven't really learned the history of it, I'm sure you would get something out of it, that first hour at least, but that last like third, I just felt was so like, ugh, what is this what is this direction? I was very disappointed. I deeply regret having delayed this video to watch it, because I learned nothing. But also, things don't seem lost for Chucky just yet. As John Mancini confirmed, there is indeed a new movie in development. When it'll come out though, who knows? I think it's smart, you know, they're in a very similar place to Saw in my opinion. That franchise is Tobin Bell in the same way that Brad Dourif is Chucky. The guy won't be able to do these forever, and so get all you can out of him before then. He's been pretty open about being retired from the industry, but has made it clear he will always make an exception for Chucky, and so take advantage of that before it's too late, you know? Even still, I can't imagine a future film will pick up right where the show left off. At most, they'll probably just give a hint towards what happened. You know, they still gotta make sure this shit is accessible to a general audience and all, and so who knows what direction they'll take it in. If there's anything consistent about Chucky, it's its inconsistency. Will they aim for horror, comedy, bring back old characters, go over what happened with Jake and gang? Who knows? I literally have no idea what to expect. What I do know is, though, I had a lot of fun going through the Chucky franchise. Its ups, downs, getting back on track, until slowly deciding to embrace every part of itself. The good, the bad, and the weird. And I'll always have a massive amount of respect for Don for sticking so close to his franchise. You can tell the guy loves doing this. But with that, I want to end this by going over the entire Chucky timeline to the best of my ability after having just watched every piece of media in a row. Best of my ability. Let's see how close I get. I want to treat this almost like a test. How much Chucky info have I managed to retain throughout this? So, without further ado, Charles Lee Ray was a troubled kid who had a fascination with blood and murder. After being inspired by a burglar to kill his own mother, he was sent into foster care where he met a psychiatrist who only fed into his deranged beliefs. With this, he began to share his interests with the impressionable kids around him, trying to inspire them to be just like him. He eventually meets a lady who shares these same desires as his, leading to the two teaming up and luring people into their apartment to murder them in cold blood. At some point during all this, he grows a mad obsession with his neighbor. Not sure if she also lives in the apartment, who knows, maybe he moved. Either way, he eventually kills her husband and keeps her hostage. Somewhere. As this is happening, his relationship with Tiffany is starting to worsen, as he begins losing interest in her, presumably after finding this new love. With this, she resentfully calls the cops on him, letting them know that he's the Lakeshore Strangler. I guess at some point after this, Tiffany then found a ring, which she had assumed was part of Charles' plan to propose to her. Meanwhile, as he's with his kidnapped victim, he hears the police outside and assumes that she must have called the cops on him. With this, he sticks a knife in her stomach and goes on the run. Let's just ignore the getaway driver. He decides to hide inside a nearby toy store before getting shot in the chest. With this, he decides to do a voodoo ritual that he learned to transfer his soul into a good guy doll. With this, he's given to a boy named Andy for his birthday, where he then tries to escape and get revenge on those who put him here in the first place. During this, he starts to notice he's becoming human again, with only one way out before he's stuck like this forever, transferring his soul into the first person he revealed his identity to, Andy. He's eventually shot and killed before being put back together by the Good Guy Corporation for examination, reviving him with one goal: to take over Andy's soul still. This plan eventually fails with him being killed inside the Good Guy's factory, where his soul remained dormant for 7 long years. It's now the late 90s as the Good Guys are coming back on the market. With this, the factory is up and running again as the blood dripping from his body mixes with some goop. Again, I think this is metaphorical. Either way, Chucky is back, being revived with one goal: to kill Andy. This plan eventually fails again, with him getting torn to shreds and thrown into police evidence, until shortly after he's found by none other than the woman who caused this all in the first place, Tiffany. After she finds out the ring she found merely belonged to one of his victims, she decides to keep him inside the doll's body forever. With this, he decides to get revenge by killing her and putting her soul inside a doll's body too. And so with this, they both set out on a road trip across America to get to Charles' grave and find the amulet he was buried with that will turn them both human again. There was an amulet. This plan ultimately fails due to their bickering, as they're both killed once and for all. But they're fucked, so Tiffany has a baby. It's been 6 years since then, as their baby has grown up into a British person. They want to learn more about their family and sees exactly what they're looking for, confusing the animatronics featured in a film adaptation of the Chucky urban legend for his real parents. With this, he heads to Los Angeles and uses the amulet he found at the graveyard all those years ago to once again revive his mother and father, as they devise a new plan to take over the soul of actress Jennifer Tilly and rapper Red. This is where it goes off. They also forcefully inseminate Jennifer in order for her to have a child that their kid Glenn/Glenda can transfer their soul into. This all, understandably, becomes too much for Chucky though, as he decides that at this point, he kinda likes being a doll, and fucks off before coming back to kill Tiffany, before then getting killed by his own child. As this happens though, Tiffany's soul manages to swap with Jennifer Tilly's, and Glenn/Glenda splitting off into her daughter and son. It's made clear Chucky isn't dead yet though, as at some point he presumably makes up with Tiffany, the two devising a plan for him to be shipped off to the house of the lady who caused them to drift apart all those years ago. He manages to kill her and now has his sights set on her daughter, before she's taken to a mental institute after being blamed for all those murders. Still though, while she's gone, he successfully manages to transfer his soul into the daughter's sister's daughter. With this, Chucky continues murdering people with his new innocent persona, before one of his victims fights back and kills the kid. With this, he's transferred back into the doll somehow. And better yet, he's learned a new trick. He can split his soul into multiple Chuckies. With this, one of them is shipped off to good ol' Andy, the rest going to the mental institution with the goal of taking over Nika's body too. Not sure why, he just wants to be a girl, okay? A few years have passed with he and Tiffany doing the same ol', as one of their Chuckies has split off to take care of a plan they've been devising to create an army of Chuckies to take over America. All him needing to do to power said army is to convince a kid to kill someone, again, for some reason. Nika begins snapping out of her possessed deeds though, where Tiffany catches her and reveals that she likes Nika a whole lot more than Chucky. Eventually though, as a result of Andy returning, along with foster sibling Kyle from Child's Play 2, Chucky's plans are thwarted, Tiffany once again breaking up with him and fleeing with Nika to LA, amputating her arms and legs to ensure Chucky can't do anything to her ever again. Chucky returns to take revenge on those three kids, teaming up with his old child psychologist to send them to the same Catholic school he went to as a kid. While this is happening, Tiffany gets a visit from Glenn and Glenda, one realizing what a murderous asshole their mother is, and rescuing Nika. However, all doesn't seem well for long, as the Chucky persona takes over once again and shoots one of them, leading to them making the tough decision to go back inside the Glenda altogether, leaving for England while still keeping in contact with Nika from time to time. After a field exorcism and swapping souls with his psychologist, Chucky escapes into a backup doll he's made to take revenge on the kids by killing Lexi's mum. He runs into Tiffany, however, as she's also at Lexi's house, in order to retrieve the Belle doll given to Lexi's little sister by the child psychologist, before Lexi then kills the final Chucky once and for all. Not all is well, though, as Tiffany steals Lexi's sister and escapes to New York. After hearing word that Nika is after her, she attempts to transfer her soul back into the doll, as actress Jennifer Tilly is wanted for the crimes Tiffany committed while in her body. However, that wasn't a Belle doll. It was simply Chucky in disguise, ready to kill Tiffany once and for all. The police bust in and arrest Tiffany, exonerating Nika of her supposed crimes and being given the death penalty. Meanwhile, Chucky has began to notice he's aging, in which he learns that the field exorcism removed the voodoo powers keeping him immortal. In order to reverse the curse, he needs to sacrifice 6 people, whom he's gonna murder in the most secure building in the world. The 3 kids are still looking for Lexi's sister and so go to the White House to look for clues after seeing Chucky on the news. Chucky's eventually shot and turned into a ghost where he's given one final chance to redeem himself, as Jake travels inside to the spirit realm to convince Chucky to kill himself once and for all. During this, however, Chucky takes control of Jake's body and lures his friends to the creator of the Good Guy doll, who not only has Lexi's sister, but also the prototype Chucky doll, which he then takes control of once again. All this to be back to square one, for real. Tiffany, also using voodoo magic, has managed to escape prison with Nika yet again coming to kill her. Before that can happen though, she transfers her soul finally back into the prototype Belle doll too. Lexi's little sister then driving them into the sunset as Nika enters the creator's house to find Jake, Lexi, and Devin all having been turned into dolls. The end. Did you follow along with any of that? I'm not even sure I did. Whatever. Happy Halloween, everybody. I don't care if it's November.